Chapter 1834. This black spirit guard in the seventh stage of the tribulation realm was the leader of this team. Yi Luxue had high hopes for this person, so he gave him a god-slaying and soul-seizing needle to deal with the mysterious powerhouse. Unfortunately, this person had used the god-slaying and soul-seizing needle, but he was unable to kill Ji Tianqing. He was only slightly injured. After dealing with this black spirit guard, Ji Tianqing quickly rushed to another mine. In a mine thousands of miles away, a dozen black spirit guards were slaughtering the guards of the mine. These black spirit guards were probably in a frenzy, so they no longer kept a low profile. They unleashed all kinds of terrifying spells, massacring the defenders in large numbers, causing the mine to crack and collapse in large areas. Of course, in the process of killing, the black spirit guards did not forget to use the gold-devouring gourd to plunder the mines. After Ji Tianqing arrived, he launched a merciless counterattack. The dozen black spirit guards had a tacit understanding. After discovering him, they stopped chasing the guards and desperately besieged him. The leader was in the seventh stage of the tribulation realm and had a god-slaying and soul-seizing needle in his hand. When Ji Tianqing tried his best to resist and deal with the black spirit guards, the leader took the opportunity to release the god-slaying and soul-seizing needle to take his life. Fortunately, Ji Tianqing had the previous experience and was prepared. When the god-slaying and soul-seizing needle appeared, he was ready. He waved the sword of burial of heaven to block it. Boom! With a loud sound, the sword of burial of heaven slashed the god-slaying and soul-seizing needle, and a dazzling white light burst out. The dazzling white light was the light of annihilation that could destroy heaven and earth. It instantly spread out and covered a radius of 200 miles. Within this area, all the rocks, earth, and mines were destroyed by the light of annihilation. When the white light dissipated, this area had become a blank area. Over 1,000 defenders were killed, turned into dust, and disappeared. Among the dozen black spirit guards, 3 were killed on the spot and turned into a pile of black ashes. The rest of the people were seriously injured, and only the leader was lightly injured. Ji Tianqing, on the other hand, was safe and sound. It was just that his divine soul was shaken and he was a little dizzy, but he recovered very quickly. Seeing this, the black spirit guards were shocked and could not believe their eyes. Ji Tianqing was thoroughly enraged. Like a berserk god of death, he held the sword of burial of heaven and began a massacre. How could those heavily injured black spirit guards stop him? In the short span of 100 breaths, more than 10 black spirit guards were killed. The leader with the strongest strength only managed to escape 1,000 miles before Ji Tianqing caught up with him and chopped him into pieces with one sword strike. After killing this group of black spirit guards, Ji Tianqing rushed to another mine without stopping. In the next hour, the entire 47th mining area was plunged into chaos. The fighting was so intense that the sky darkened. In the end, 70% of the mine's defenders were killed, and only 100 or so managed to escape. The leader of the mining area and the 2 powerhouses were lucky enough to survive. They escaped from the mining area with heavy injuries and went to report the news. 90% of the 60 black spirit guards were also killed by Ji Tianqing. Only 5 black spirit guards escaped from the mining area in advance when they saw that the situation was not good. After the battle, Ji Tianqing seized more than 50 golden sword tokens and more than 20 gold-devouring gourds. Of course, there were also more than 100 gem veins and more than 50 space rings. Each space ring contained a huge amount of cultivation resources and wealth. Together with the spoils of war from 2 days ago, he would not have to worry about cultivation resources for many years to come. The news of the 47th mining area quickly spread to the Tianjue camp and the Sunset City. When the 2 sides heard the news, they naturally had 2 different reactions. The Tianjue camp was gloomy, and the morale was low. Yi Luxue's face was twisted with anger, and he roared with murderous intent. He had adjusted the action plan and used several god-killing and soul-seizing needles, but the plan still failed. Another 60 black spirit guards were killed. Such a heavy loss made his heart bleed. The generals were also incomparably sad and indignant. They wished they could go to the battlefield and kill that damned mysterious strong man. In the army, the news about the mysterious strong man and the white-robed young man spread rapidly. The name, white-robed killing god, spread like wildfire, and became more and more mysterious in the army. On the other hand, in the Sunset City, Holy Emperor Chongyun and the generals were in high spirits. In their hearts, the death of more than 2,000 guards was not a big deal. The death of more than 60 black spirit guards was the greatest victory and gain. Holy Emperor Chongyun and the generals were full of gratitude and curiosity toward the mysterious strong man. Everyone was talking about it, and they wished they could go to the mining area and see who the three mysterious strong men were. The leader of the mining area was smart enough to take the time to observe the mysterious strong man in the white robe during the battle. In the meeting hall, in front of Saint Emperor Chongyun and all the generals, he described the white-robed expert's brilliance vividly. It was very vivid. The process from his mouth was very thrilling, and it made everyone even more curious about the strong man in the white robe. Thus, Holy Emperor Chongyun decided to send reinforcements to strengthen the defense of the mining area. At the same time, he ordered the leaders and generals of the mining area to investigate the identities of the three mysterious strong men. Especially the strong man in the white robe, he was an important person to investigate. Of course, after the meeting, he summoned Su Chen to ask about Ji Tianqing. Su Chen still did not rest. He led the guards and searched everywhere for Ji Tianqing. He was dizzy from the search. After a few days of fruitless searching, Su Chen was already mentally and physically exhausted. He was very angry with Ji Tianqing and scolded him behind his back. If not for Ji Tianqing's special identity, he would not care about Ji Tianqing's life or death. A few days later, news about the black spirit guards and the strong man in the white robe spread in the Sunset City. All the generals held the white-robed expert in high esteem. Countless soldiers also respected and worshipped him. Some people called him the white-robed killing god and prayed that he could kill all the black spirit guards and resolve the crisis of the Sunset Mine. Soon, another 3 days passed. After 2 failures, Yi Lushui decided to temporarily stabilize the situation and not expand or invade. He sent out dozens of black spirit guards in teams of 3 to guard the mines that he had already conquered. For now, he did not hope to conquer more mines. He only hoped to defend the mines that he already had. Especially the 20 mines that he had conquered in the past month. The mines that were close to the Luoshui God Kingdom were the most dangerous areas. As long as he could defend these mines and stall for time, the Heaven's End God Kingdom would be able to plunder more ores. However, something happened that made Yi Lushui so angry that he vomited blood. He did not send the black spirit guards to invade the mines, but the white-robed killing god took the initiative to attack. In 3 days, many mines were attacked. Thousands of miners and guards were mercilessly slaughtered by the white-robed killing god. Chapter 1835. The people of the Heaven's End Divine Nation were well aware. As long as the 2 divine nations did not go to war, they could only occupy the mining areas temporarily and would have to return them sooner or later. Before returning the mining areas, they only wanted to mine as much as possible and plunder the resources. But they did not expect that they would be attacked by the god of massacre after occupying the mining areas for only a few days. This was especially true for the newly occupied mining areas. Before they could extract much ore, they had already fallen into enemy hands. The guards and supervisors guarding the mining areas, as well as tens of thousands of miners, were all killed. Within 3 days, all 5 mining areas were lost and more than 50,000 people were killed. Among them were 10 Tribulation Realm Black Spirit Guards and more than 400 Essence Soul Realm experts. The god of massacre's powerful strength and ruthlessness terrified the people of the Heavens and Divine Nation. For a time, the newly occupied mining areas were in a state of panic and uneasiness. When the news reached the camp of the Heavens and Divine Nation, Yi Lushui quickly gathered the generals and discussed countermeasures overnight. It was said that the generals discussed for a long time with indignation. Everyone hated the god of massacre to the core and regarded him as the biggest stumbling block, a target that must be eliminated. Most of the generals proposed to send the most elite black spirit guards with the help of the immortal guards to kill the god of massacre. Moreover, the Heavens and Divine Nation would temporarily stop invading the mining areas and focus on defense. Especially the newly occupied mining areas, they must send a large number of troops and experts to guard against the god of massacre's attack. That night, after Yi Lushui discussed the plan with the generals, he gave orders on the spot to make new deployments and arrangements. In addition, he also announced a reward. Whoever could kill the god of massacre would be rewarded with a saint-level magic treasure and 50 million cultivation resources. After this news spread, everyone was indescribably shocked and excited to the extreme. Even the generals were very tempted and wanted to fly to the mining areas and kill the god of massacre with their own hands. In just one day, Yi Lushui's orders and plans were implemented. The 18 newly occupied mining areas were all fortified and guarded. Many black spirit guards and immortal guards were stationed there. Several teleportation formations and channels were also set up between the mining areas. Once a mining area was attacked by the god of massacre, the experts in other mining areas could quickly rush over to support. Many powerhouses were waiting for the white-robed god of death to walk right into their trap. Compared to the solemn atmosphere of the Heaven Absolute Camp, Sunset City had always been relaxed and cheerful. Saint Emperor Chongyun and the soldiers would receive the latest news every day. They would receive frequent reports from the front lines. Most of the news was the same. The white-clothed killing god had attacked another mining area and slaughtered all the guards and miners of the Heaven and God Nation. The Heaven and Divine Nation suffered heavy casualties and was forced to abandon the mining area and flee in panic. In just 3 days, the white-clothed Reaper had attacked 5 mining areas and slaughtered more than 50,000 people. Saint Emperor Chongyun and the other generals were amazed by the white-clothed killing god's terrifying strength. They did not forget to send out a large number of experts and guards to take back the mining areas. At the same time, Holy Emperor Chongyun also passed down orders for the leaders of the various mines to be on standby at any time. Once the white-clothed killing god took action and reclaimed a mining area, the leaders of the mining area would have to quickly provide support and lead the army to enter the mining area. Late night of the 4th day. Within a certain mining area, 100 li underground. A huge black shadow that was hundreds of feet long was silently flying through the pitch-black underground. It was a huge beast that was completely black and covered in scales. It was the Xitigarbha divine armor. It was the overlord of the earth and it hid its aura as it traveled underground. No one below the martial sage realm could detect it. 4 powerhouses stood quietly on its broad back. The leader was a youth in a white robe, Ji Tianqing. Standing beside him was a man in golden armor. He was only a meter tall and he carried a dark golden war hammer. This person was the leader of the Earth Spirit tribe, the Golden Mountain King. Behind the two of them stood a young man and a young woman. They were both experts with cold and murderous auras. They were Ji Bai and Shou Hei. The Golden Mountain King looked ahead and sent a voice transmission to Ji Tianqing, "Young master, are we really going to cross the 18 mining areas and attack mining area C?" Ji Tianqing nodded slightly and said calmly, "There are more than 200 mining areas in the Sunset Holy Mine. According to the different directions, they are divided into 4 areas, namely A, B, C and D. Mining area A and B are around Sunset City and are currently safe. They are under the control of the Luoshui Holy Kingdom. Mining Area C is near the Drifting Cloud Mountain and has been occupied by the Heaven Extinction Holy Kingdom. Only Mining Area D is still being fought over. Half of it belongs to the Luoshui Holy Kingdom and the other half is occupied by the Heaven Extinction Holy Kingdom. In the past 3 days, I have conquered 5 mining areas. The people of the Heaven Extinction Holy Kingdom will definitely be restless and hate me to the core. Yi Lushui will definitely strengthen the defense and send a large number of experts to guard the 18 mining areas. He will wait for me to die. Speaking of this, his lips curled into a cold smile and he said playfully, if I act according to plan and attack the 18 mining areas, I will be walking into a trap. Yi Lushui has sent most of the experts to guard the 18 mining areas. The defense at the back must be weak. I want to give Yi Lushui a surprise and make him even more anxious. The Golden Mountain King thought for a while and nodded, young master, this is a good idea. We have the initiative and can advance or retreat as we wish. The other party can't do anything to us. However, even if we kill the guards and miners of Mining Area C, the Luoshui Holy Kingdom won't be able to send people to reclaim it. Ji Tianqing gently shook his head and said, there is no need to rush. I am here to help Holy Emperor Changyun to resolve the crisis of the entire Sunset Divine Mine, not to reclaim a few mining areas. As long as we continue to attack and inflict heavy losses on the Heaven Extinction Holy Kingdom, they will not be able to hold on for long and will flee in defeat. At that time, the problem will be solved and Holy Emperor Changyun will lead people to reclaim all the mining areas. Only then did the Golden Mountain King understand his overall plan. He immediately showed a look of admiration and saluted, young master, this humble king admires your wisdom. Ji Tianqing just smiled and did not say anything else. Unknowingly, half a day passed. The Xitigarbha divine armor traveled tens of thousands of miles underground and finally entered Mining Area C. This area was not far from Drifting Cloud Mountain. There were more than 60 mining areas around it that were occupied by the Heaven Extinction Holy Kingdom. In each mining area, there were hundreds of guards and supervisors, monitoring the tens of thousands of miners who were mining day and night. The situation was just as Ji Tianqing expected. The defense of the mining areas in this area was weak and there were not many experts guarding them. After all, Yi Lushui had sent most of the experts to Mining Area D. Ji Tianqing randomly picked a mining area and immediately began to move. The Golden Mountain King and the Xitigarbha divine armor hid in the mining area and used a secret technique to control the power of the earth to form an invisible shield and seal the mining area. Chapter 1836. In just a quarter of an hour, the Jinshan King and the Xitigarbha godly armor had finished casting the spell. A shield of barren earth formed by the power of the earth enveloped the mining area within a radius of 8,000 miles. With this shield of barren earth, no matter what happened in the mining area, it would not be discovered by others. Ji Tianqing brought Ji Bai and Shohei, quietly entered the mining area and began the massacre. Swish! 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 Suddenly, more than a dozen giant golden swords appeared in a dimly lit mine and floated in the air. The hundreds of miners and dozens of supervisors who were working in the mine were suddenly awakened and turned their heads to look at the golden swords. At the same time, the giant golden swords, which were more than 10 meters tall, shot out sword lights that filled the sky like a rain of arrows. Bang! 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 In an instant, the hundreds of miners and dozens of supervisors were hit by the overwhelming sword lights and burst into blobs of blood. Dull thuds and painful screams mixed together, echoing endlessly in the mine. In a short span of 10 breaths, the dozen or so golden swords shot out tens of thousands of sword lights, killing everyone in the mine. The miners and supervisors did not know who the murderer was until they died. From the beginning to the end, Ji Tianqing did not show his face. Soon, the giant golden swords dissipated. Ji Tianqing quietly left and quickly rushed to the next mine. Not long after, he entered another mine and used the same trick again, quickly killing hundreds of people. Next, the same scene played out again and again. Tragic massacres also occurred in the various mines and tunnels one after another. Ji Tianqing acted alone, while Ji Bai and Shohei worked together. With their strength, killing the supervisors and guards of the primordial soul realm and the miners of the soul refining realm was as easy as blowing off dust. Only when they encountered the powerhouses of the tribulation realm would they spend more time and effort. However, there were only 2 powerhouses of the tribulation realm in the mining area within a radius of 8,000 miles. Ji Tianqing alone killed the 2 powerhouses of the tribulation realm in a dozen moves. About 2 hours later, the entire mine quieted down. More than 10,000 miners, 2,000 supervisors and guards, as well as 2 tribulation cultivators, had all been wiped out. Ji Tianqing left with Ji Bai and Shohei. The Golden Mountain King and Xitigarbha divine armor also removed the shield of barren earth. After that, everyone quietly rushed to the next mining area. It was the same method, and the same scene of slaughter was quickly repeated. 1 mine, 2 mines, 3 mines, unknowingly, 2 days had passed. In the next 2 days, Ji Tianqing and the others had slaughtered close to 200,000 Heaven's Extinction Divine Nations people. 19 mining areas were lost. All the miners and guards had turned into corpses, and the mine was like a slaughterhouse. After 2 days of continuous fighting, Ji Tianqing and the others had expended a lot of magic power and were mentally exhausted. Thus, everyone quietly left the area and hid to rest. At the same time, the news of the 19 mining areas being lost one after another also reached the camp of the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation. In the meeting hall, there was a heavy and solemn atmosphere. When Yi Lushui heard the news, he was so angry that his eyes turned red. He smashed the beam in the hall with his palm. All the generals were silent. They were so scared that their faces turned pale and their bodies trembled. In the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation, Yi Lushui's reputation was extremely resounding. He was a terrifying martial saint, a butcher and an executioner. He was in charge of the Divine Guard Legion and carried out the will of martial god Tianju. He supervised the entire divine nation and had the power to kill. In the past 1,000 years, there were at least 8 million people who had died directly or indirectly under Yi Lushui's hands. A few days ago, Yi Lushui had gathered all the generals to discuss countermeasures. As a result, everyone unanimously decided to strengthen the defense in the 18 mining areas of D, and a large number of powerhouses and divine guards would be stationed there. Everyone thought that this time, the white-clothed god of death would definitely walk into the trap and die. But it turned out that they were all fooled by the white-clothed god of death. The white-clothed god of death had already seen through their conspiracy and did not attack the 18 mining areas at all. Instead, he went to the C mining area to cause trouble. The death of 200,000 miners and guards was a painful blow to the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation. Who could be responsible for such a heavy loss? Of course, everyone knew why Yi Lushui was so furious. His intelligence and strategy had been ruthlessly trampled on by the white-clothed god of death. This was simply an unbearable insult. For a moment, Yi Lushui almost could not hold back his anger and wanted to find the white-clothed god of death personally. However, for the sake of the overall situation, he suppressed this idea. After all, he was a martial saint powerhouse, the right-hand man of martial god Tianju. Once he personally took action, it would not be able to hide from the Luoshui divine nation. At that time, the situation would be unsalvageable. After a long time, Yi Lushui calmed down and discussed a new strategy with the generals. A day passed quickly. Ji Tianqing, Jin Shan King, and the others rested for a whole day. After recuperating, they set off again and started to act again. This time, Ji Tianqing changed his strategy and had a new plan. He still stayed in the C mining area and attacked a random mining area. Moreover, he only attacked 2 mining areas at a time and then quickly retreated to another place. Shan King was confused and asked him why he was doing this. Why not destroy more than 10 mining areas like before and deal a heavy blow to the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation? Ji Tianqing smiled and said meaningfully, in just 10 days, we have destroyed more than 20 mining areas and killed more than 200,000 guards and miners. No matter how strong Yi Lushui is, he can't take such a heavy blow. He is the right-hand man of martial god Tianju. He is proud and arrogant. How can he take such an insult? I guess he must be furious and can't wait to tear me into pieces. He might even give a death order to kill me at all costs. They are in the light and I am in the dark. I have the initiative in my hands. How can I give them a chance to take advantage of me? Even I don't know where my next target is, so how could they possibly surround me? After hearing his words, the Jinshan king understood what he meant and laughed heartily. Ha ha ha. Young master, your idea is wonderful. You are fighting a battle of wits and courage with Yi Lushui. That old man will be angered to death by you sooner or later. In the next 2 weeks, Ji Tianqing had been cruising in the depths of the underground and didn't show up easily. He sometimes appeared in Mining Area C, sometimes in Mining Area D, and sometimes at the foot of Drifting Cloud Mountain. In short, his whereabouts were erratic and unpredictable, and there was no pattern to speak of. With the help of the Xitigarbha divine armor, the overlord of the earth, he was like a god underground. Except for martial saints, no one could catch up with him and no one could kill him. Chapter 1837. Half a month passed. The situation between Heaven End God Nation and Luoshui God Nation had also changed. In just a dozen days, more than 60 mining areas occupied by Heaven End God Nation had already been lost. Yi Lushui had spent more than 2 months to occupy these mining areas, but they were all lost in half a month. More than 600,000 of the miners and defenders he brought were also slaughtered. It was no exaggeration to say that the 1,000,000 troops of Heaven End God Nation were already dead in name, and their vitality was greatly damaged. Today, Heaven End God Nation only had more than 200,000 miners and 20 mining areas near Drifting Cloud Mountain. Yi Lushui had already lost. Even if there were still hundreds of thousands of troops stationed in the 4 camps, they couldn't be easily used. The defeat was set, and Yi Lushui was powerless to reverse the situation. And the person who caused all this was not Saint Emperor Chongyun, nor was it the 1,000,000 troops of Luoshui God Nation. It was a white-robed youth in the Tribulation Realm. The guy who was known as the White-Robed Killing God. In the past 20 days, the White-Robed Killing God had slaughtered more than 600,000 Heaven End people, and he really deserved the title of Killing God. Now, in the Heaven End camp, the expression of the White-Robed Killing God really changed. All the soldiers hated him to the bone, but they were also afraid of him like a tiger. Early in the morning. The sky was gloomy and dark, and there was no sunlight at all. Instead, there was a howling wind, as if a storm was about to descend. In the Heaven End camp, in the most sacred and dignified meeting hall, Yi Lushui, who was dressed in a purple robe, sat in the main seat expressionlessly, leaning on the throne and resting with his eyes closed. He supported his forehead with one hand and frowned as he pondered. The aura all over his body was cold and murderous, and his body was motionless. He seemed to have transformed into an abyss of death, brewing terrifying power. In the hall, more than 20 golden-armored generals stood on both sides. Everyone's face was very ugly, and their morale was very low. Their eyes were dim. These generals were all the elites of Heaven End God Nation, and all of them were good at war and rarely lost. In the past, they were all arrogant and ambitious, and didn't put Luoshui God Nation in their eyes at all. When talking about Luoshui God Nation, they always used words like trash and coward. But now, after a long while, a white-haired old general with a higher status stood out and saluted Yi Lushui. "Sir Saint Emperor, our army has suffered heavy casualties, and our morale has hit rock bottom. Rumors have spread throughout the army, and it's already difficult to pacify them." The miners were also in a state of panic. Even if they used force to suppress them, it did not work. Every day, there would be people escaping on their own. "We can't go on like this. Lord Saint Emperor, please make a decision as soon as possible." This old general had a rather high reputation in the Heaven Absolute Divine Nation. He was once the Grand Marshal of a certain empire and was known as Marshal Pang. Now in this hall, he was the backbone of all the generals. His reputation and status were second only to Yi Lushui. Yi Liushui's thoughts were interrupted and he slowly opened his eyes. He didn't even raise his head to look at Pang Shui. With an expressionless face and an indifferent tone, he said, "When the Eastern expedition began, I've already said it. Our attack on the Sunset Divine Mine this time is to loot a burning house. We are taking the opportunity to plunder the Sunset Divine Kingdom's resources and weaken their national power. Sooner or later, they would have to return the mining area to the Luoshui Divine Nation. Unless the people of the Luoshui Divine Nation are crazy and start a war with us, we would have an excuse to invade the Luoshui Divine Nation and completely occupy the Sunset Divine Mine. What we need to do is to plunder as many resources as possible before returning the mining area." At this point, a cold smile appeared on Yi Liushui's face. He said in a cold tone, "I originally thought that I would be able to occupy their mining area for at least a year. But who would have thought that in just a short 4 months, everything would be over? Ha ha ha. A mere tribulation realm white-clothed youth ruined my overall plan and slaughtered more than 600,000 people. Even that trash Su Chongyun was not worthy of competing with me. How could I be defeated by a white-clothed youth?" When he said the last sentence, Yi Liushui's voice was trembling. A murderous red light appeared in his eyes. He was like an enraged lion. Pang Shui hurriedly cupped his hands and bowed. He comforted, "Lord Saint Emperor, please calm down. That white-clothed killing god is indeed powerful, sinister, and cunning. But after all, he is only at the tribulation realm. How can he be compared with Lord Saint Emperor? It's just that due to the agreement between the two nations, Lord Saint Emperor can't personally take action. That's why the white-clothed killing god is so rampant. Otherwise, once Lord Saint Emperor takes action, even if there are 10 white-clothed killing gods, they will be crushed to death by your finger." All the generals echoed and complimented Yi Lushui. Yi Liushui's anger subsided a lot and his expression eased. He frowned and thought for a moment. He said in a low voice, "Now we only have 20 mining areas left, and they are all near the Drifting Cloud Mountain. All the miners and guards, as well as the Black Spirit Guards and the Immortal Guards, are stationed in these mining areas. The defensive power of these mining areas is unprecedented and all the generals can provide support at any time. No matter how sinister and cunning that white-clothed killing god is, he can't do anything about it." Pang Shui nodded and said in a serious tone, "Lord Saint Emperor is right. Previously, the white-clothed killing god was wandering around and could sneak attack several mining areas every day. But now it's different. In the past 2 days, he has only attacked 2 mining areas. Next, his actions will become more and more difficult. He can forget about taking back another mining area." Yi Lushui nodded slightly and said in a cold voice, "As long as we defend the 20 mining areas, no one can do anything to us. During this period, we must do our best to mine the resources. When the resources in those mining areas have been squeezed dry, I will give the order to retreat and return them to the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. However, we have suffered such heavy losses. If we leave things unsettled like this emperor will not take this lying down. Before we retreat, I must find that white-clothed killing god, cut him into pieces, and burn his bones to ashes." Hearing his words, Pang Shuai and the generals were looking forward to it. They looked at him with burning eyes. What is Lord Saint Emperor's plan? Yi Lushui sneered and said in a bitter tone, we can't find out the identity of the white-clothed killing god, but Su Chongyun definitely knows. I will write a letter and send it to Su Chongyun, asking him to meet me at the Drifting Cloud Mountain. At that time, I will have a way to make him hand over the white-clothed killing god. I would like to see whether the white-clothed killing god's life is more important, or the 20 mining areas and the lives of 100,000 soldiers are more important. Hearing his words, Pang Shuai and the generals were startled and puzzled. Pang Shuai stroked his white beard and frowned. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly understood something. His expression suddenly changed. He looked at Yi Lushui in disbelief and asked, Lord Saint Emperor, do you mean, use the 20 mining areas as a threat to negotiate with Su Chongyun? Force him to hand over the white-clothed killing god? Yi Lushui glanced at him and sneered, so what? A single white-robed god of death had ruined my plans and caused me to suffer heavy losses. Chapter 1838. Sunset City was in a state of jubilation. In the past 20 days, news of victory had been sent back to Sunset City every day, spreading throughout the Luoshui God Nation's camp. Every day, a few mines were recovered, and tens of thousands of Tianju's people were slaughtered. The million-strong Luoshui army had long been overjoyed, their morale high to the extreme. The legends of the white-clothed killing god had also spread throughout Sunset City and the army camp. Although very few people had seen the white-clothed killing god before. However, everyone worshipped him and described him as wise, powerful, and mysterious to the extreme. Even the scenes of the white-clothed killing god slaughtering Tianju's people and recovering the mines were described vividly by everyone, making people feel as if they were there. In short, the white-clothed killing god had become a great hero in everyone's hearts, a savior. His status and significance even surpassed Holy Emperor Chongyun's. Everyone was looking forward to the white-clothed killing god creating more glory, continuing to slaughter Tianju's people and taking back more mines. According to the current situation, all the mines would be recovered within 10 days at most. At that time, Tianju's people could only scram out of the Sunset God Mine and flee back to Tianju God Nation. Early in the morning, the sky was covered with dark clouds. Sunset City's Chongyun Palace was as busy as usual, with people moving about. In the main hall, a military meeting was held as usual. Holy Emperor Chongyun sat at the head of the table, listening to the generals report the latest battle situation and news. Even Su Chen stood in the main hall, participating in the meeting with the generals. After all, he was one of the generals under Holy Emperor Chongyun. He commanded the guards of Sunset City, and was responsible for the safety of the entire city. Ji Tianxing had been missing for more than 20 days. Su Chen had searched for 10 days, but he couldn't find Ji Tianxing, so he gave up completely. In his and Holy Emperor Chongyun's opinion, Ji Tianxing had most likely escaped from the Sunset God Mine and secretly returned to Luotian Mountain. In this half a month, there were news of victory sent back to Sunset City every day, allowing everyone to see the hope of recovering the God Mine. Holy Emperor Chongyun and Su Chen were busy dealing with the divine mines and setting Sun City. They had long forgotten about Ji Tianxing. Of course, the white-clothed killing god's reputation was becoming more and more famous, and he had become a great hero worshipped by the whole nation. Su Chen was also very grateful and worshipped the white-clothed killing god. Even in his dreams, he wanted to see the white-clothed killing god. He wanted to pay his respects and worship him to express his most sincere gratitude. At this moment, a general in black armor reported to Saint Emperor Chongyun, reporting to Saint Emperor, there was no movement near Drifting Cloud Mountain last night. The white-robed killing god didn't attack again. Hearing this news, all the generals were stunned. They whispered to each other with puzzled faces and started discussing secretly. Divine Emperor Chongyun frowned. After thinking for a moment, he said, "Everyone knows that in the past 20 days, the white-clothed killing god has been attacking the various mining areas. He has already killed more than 600,000 Tianju realm cultivators and helped us reclaim more than 60 mining areas. This was already a huge contribution, and also an inconceivable miracle. For this person to be able to do so much, he is already a great hero who saved the Sunset Divine Mine. Even if this emperor sees him, I will have to pay my respects and thank him. In fact, I will even report this matter to the Divine Master and ask him to reward him heavily. Even if the white-clothed killing god doesn't act anymore, we can't criticize him or ask for anything." Su Chen immediately stood up and said with a solemn expression, "That's right. I agree with Lord Saint Emperor's words. When the Sunset Divine Mine was invaded and we were at our wits' end, the white-clothed killing god appeared out of nowhere and helped us reclaim more than 60 mining areas. We, the people of Luo Shui, should be grateful and respectful. We can't forget his kindness. The white-clothed killing god fought alone. No matter how strong he would still be injured and exhausted, so, don't feel disappointed or regretful. The rest of the matter should be settled by us." The generals all chimed in, supporting Su Chen's words. "That's right. We, the people of Luo Shui, are not ungrateful people. The white-clothed killing god has accomplished such a feat and miracle. It's enough for us to remember it for the rest of our lives and be grateful to him. No matter what, I hope the white-clothed killing god will be safe and sound." Seeing that everyone had such thoughts, Saint Emperor Changyun's expression eased and he continued, "I believe everyone knows that the Heaven End Divine Nation only has 20 mining areas left. They have stationed all their forces in those mining areas. According to the investigation of the spies and scouts, there are 200,000 miners, 80,000 guards, more than 2,000 supervisors, and more than 200 divine guards and black spirit guards stationed there. With such a tight defense, the white-clothed killing god will definitely find it difficult to invade. He can't act rashly, or else it will be dangerous. What we need to do now is to put as much pressure on the Heaven End Divine Nation as possible and restrain their forces to create an opportunity for the white-clothed killing god." Su Chen and the generals nodded in agreement, but they all frowned and felt that it was very troublesome. "Lord Saint Emperor, your idea is very good, but how should we act? We can't use the army on the surface and can only compete in the dark. This is difficult. Everyone, think of a way and pool your ideas." Just as everyone was discussing countermeasures, a messenger commandant rushed into the main hall as fast as the wind. "Report. Lord Saint Emperor, the Heaven End camp has sent an envoy to deliver a letter written by the Marshal Saint Yi Lushui." The messenger officer knelt in the hall and held a sandalwood box with both hands. Everyone immediately quieted down. Su Chen hurriedly took the sandalwood box and respectfully handed it to Saint Emperor Changyun. Saint Emperor Changyun opened the sandalwood box and saw a jade slip in it. He picked up the jade slip and inserted his divine sense into it to check the contents of the jade slip. A scene immediately appeared in his mind. Yi Lushui, who was wearing a purple robe, was leaning on a wide throne. He stroked his snow-white hair and said in a cold tone, "Su Changyun, tonight at midnight, this emperor will wait for you at the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain. You must be very anxious and want to recover the mining areas as soon as possible and end this secret war. If so, then you can't miss tonight's negotiation. As long as you are smart enough, this emperor will return those 20 mining areas with both hands. If you don't come, then take care of yourself. Ha ha ha." At the end, Yi Lushui sneered with an evil expression. His posture was very confident and arrogant. Saint Emperor Changyun withdrew his divine sense and crushed the jade slip. His face immediately became gloomy. He frowned fiercely and pondered with a dignified expression. Seeing his reaction, Su Chen and the generals were immediately filled with worry and doubt and asked one after another, "Lord Saint Emperor, what happened? Yi Lushui, that old bastard, what trick is he playing now? Lord Saint Emperor, is it related to the white-clothed killing god? Did Yi Lushui capture the white-clothed killing god himself? Chapter 1839. Su Chen and the other generals immediately revealed doubtful expressions and discussed animatedly. Lord Divine Emperor, Yi Lushui wants to negotiate with you at Drifting Cloud Mountain? There must be something going on. Yi Lushui must be up to something. Lord Divine Emperor, please reconsider. Lord Divine Emperor, does this have anything to do with the white-robed killing god? Why does Yi Lushui want to negotiate? Everyone stared at Divine Emperor Chongyun, eager to know the answer. Divine Emperor Chongyun said expressionlessly, Yi Lushui is arrogant and proud. If he wasn't forced into a corner, he wouldn't negotiate with me. Therefore, this must be related to the white-robed killing god. However, I have to go personally to find out what Yi Lushui is up to. Everyone, please don't try to persuade me. I have my own plans. With that, he called out the names of Su Chen and a few other generals to follow him to Drifting Cloud Mountain for negotiations. The remaining generals had to stay in Sunset City and the mining area. After the meeting, Divine Emperor Chongyun left the hall first. Su Chen and the other generals also left to prepare for tonight's negotiation. Not long after, everyone was ready. They left Sunset City with Holy Emperor Chongyun and rushed to Drifting Cloud Mountain. 16 hours passed quickly. It was now midnight. There were only 2 more hours to midnight. There was an area of 10 miles at the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain. The terrain was quite flat. The Drifting Cloud Mountain was silent at night. However, there were 10 strong cultivators gathered at the peak. The leader was a handsome man in a purple robe with white hair and a white beard. He was Marshal Saint Yi Lushui. He was leaning on a golden throne inlaid with jade. He supported his chin with one hand and closed his eyes to rest. There was a layer of invisible aura around his body, protecting him like a shield. Even if the night wind blew, it couldn't blow up his clothes and white hair. In the empty space behind him, 9 generals in golden armor stood in a row, quietly and respectfully waiting on him. In addition, there were more than 50 majestic divine guards in silver armor at the edge of the field. These divine guards were spread out and formed a semicircle with the flag of the Heaven and Divine Nation beside them. Even though the night sky was as dark as ink and the wind was cold, no one moved. They waited quietly. A heavy and austere aura quietly enveloped the entire mountain peak. At the same time, 50 kilometers away from Drifting Cloud Mountain. In the depths of the dark underground, there was a naturally formed cave. Ji Tianqing, dressed in a white robe, was sitting cross-legged in the cave, silently meditating. Other than him, there was no one else in the cave. Both Ji Bai and Shohei had suffered heavy injuries. The previous 20 days of fighting had also exhausted their mana and exhausted their strength. At this moment, the 2 of them were recuperating in the sword world. About half an hour later, a 30 feet long shadow suddenly emerged from the dark brown rock layer. Shua! The black figure quietly came to Ji Tianqing's side and stopped. Its appearance was like a pangolin. Its entire body was as black as ink and covered in scales. It was the Xitigarbha divine armor that had shrunk countless times. Reporting to Master, this subordinate discovered something at the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain. The Xitigarbha divine armor looked at Ji Tianqing and reported the news to him using divine sense. Ji Tianqing slowly opened his eyes and asked through voice transmission, "What did you discover?" The Xitigarbha divine armor replied in a low voice, "The situation is just as Master expected. The people of Heaven and Divine Nation can't hold it in any longer." This subordinate discovered that a large number of experts have arrived at the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain. Among them, there are more than 60 tribulation stage experts and a white-haired martial saint. Ji Tianqing immediately frowned and said in a low voice, "White-haired martial saint. That must be Yi Lushui. Strange, he should be in a terrible state right now. Why would he bring a large number of experts to the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain?" Thinking of this, he keenly sensed that the situation was not good. He stepped on the back of the Xiaofan divine armor and ordered, "Take me to see the situation." "What the hell is Yi Lushui doing?" The Xiaofan divine armor did not say anything else. Its entire body emitted a mysterious black light that wrapped around him. In the blink of an eye, it carried Ji Tianqing and drilled into the rock stratum, quietly moving upwards. It was the overlord of the earth and could manipulate the power of the earth, rocks, and mineral veins. As long as it carefully hid its aura, almost no one could find its trace. After a short 100 breaths, the Xiaofan divine armor followed the belly of the mountain and arrived at the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain. When it was 5 miles away from the peak of the mountain, it stopped and quietly hid in the rock layer inside the mountain. Ji Tianqing sat quietly on its back and used its power to cast a secret method to quietly observe the situation at the peak of the mountain. He soon saw that in the open space with a radius of 10 miles on the peak of the mountain, there were indeed more than 60 tribulation stage experts gathered. The most conspicuous one was the white-haired man in front of the crowd. He sat on the throne with a golden saber and a golden saber, exuding an extremely dangerous aura. That purple-robed white-haired guy should be Yi Lushui. Looking at the posture of him and the generals, it seems that he is waiting for someone to come and meet him. With such a big lineup on the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain, is the person Yi Lushui is waiting for. Su Changyun? Ji Tianqing frowned and thought for a moment. He vaguely guessed Yi Lushui's intention. He decided to lurk in the mountain and secretly monitor Yi Lushui. On the peak of the mountain, Yi Lushui had been leaning on the throne and quietly resting with his eyes closed. Suddenly, he felt something. He vaguely perceived that a wisp of divine thought was sweeping around. He immediately frowned and opened his eyes to look at the ground under his feet. But at this moment, in the night sky not far away, a bright 5-colored brilliance lit up. A 5-colored auspicious cloud cut through the night sky and was moving as fast as lightning. Swoosh! In just a few breaths, the 5-colored auspicious cloud arrived at the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain and slowly descended. Yi Lushui, the 9 generals and more than 50 immortal guards all looked at the 5-colored auspicious cloud with cold and hostile eyes. After the 5-colored auspicious cloud dissipated, the figures of 10 experts appeared. The leader was a white-haired man in a golden robe and a purple cloak. This man was tall and burly and had a majestic appearance. He exuded the noble and powerful aura of a martial sage. He was Holy Emperor Changyun. Behind him was a young man in a golden robe. It was Su Chen. In addition to the father and son, there were 8 other generals in armor. They all carried swords and walked over with majestic expressions. In the blink of an eye, Holy Emperor Changyun brought Su Chen and the others to the scene and stood still. He looked coldly at Yi Lushui, who was 1,000 feet away, and asked in an indifferent tone, "Yi Lushui, you sent someone to send me a letter and asked me to meet here. What do you want?" Su Chen and the 8 generals of the Luoshui divine kingdom all stared at Yi Lushui with vigilance. Yi Lushui saw that everyone was as if they were facing a great enemy. He could not help but curl his lips and reveal a playful sneer. Chapter 1840. Hearing Yi Lushui's words, the 9 generals behind him all sneered contemptuously. "TSK TSK. Luoshui Divine Kingdom's people are trash. They're scared to this extent. Humph. In the past 3 months, we've been invincible. We've conquered more than 80 mines. They're already scared out of their wits. Lord Divine Emperor's might is unparalleled. Just one look from him is enough to scare the Luoshui Divine Kingdom's people to this extent. The 9 generals whispered to each other, openly mocking Su Chen and the others. When Su Chen and the other generals heard this, they were instantly enraged. They glared at the 9 heaven-end grade generals with murderous intent. Both sides were seething with anger, and were about to start cursing at each other. Divine Emperor Chongyun waved his hand, indicating for Su Chen and the others to calm down. Then, he stared coldly at Yi Lushui and asked in a deep voice, "Yi Lushui, did you ask this emperor to meet here just to have a war of words? If so, this emperor wouldn't have bothered to meet you." Yi Lushui gradually put away his sneer and said expressionlessly, "Since you're so anxious, this emperor will get straight to the point and talk business. You should understand the current situation even if this emperor doesn't say it. This emperor has already shrunk the defense with all his might, fortifying the 20 mining areas and making them impregnable. Even if you want to reclaim those mines, it'll take at least 3 to 5 years. Moreover, in the process of reclaiming those mines, you'll have to sacrifice at least 100,000 soldiers. In 3 to 5 years, the mines will have been drained dry by this emperor's people. Even if I return them to you, they'll only be empty shells." As Yi Liushui's voice sounded, the entire mountain fell silent. Everyone stared at him. Divine Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others' faces were a bit gloomy, but they didn't refute. After all, this was something that everyone was well aware of. Divine Emperor Chongyun frowned and asked indifferently, "Then you mean?" Yi Lushui stroked his white hair and looked askance at Divine Emperor Chongyun. He said slowly, "It's very simple. Let's make a deal. You really want to reclaim those 20 mines and resolve the crisis of the Sunset Divine Mine as soon as possible. Only then can you report to Luoshui Martial God and prove that you're not trash. This emperor can fulfill your wish and return those 20 mines to you. Furthermore, I will bring all the soldiers and miners away from this place as quickly as possible." Hearing him say this, Su Chen and the generals were a little moved, but their eyes were even more alert. Everyone knew that Yi Lushui would never do this for no reason. He must be up to something. Divine Emperor Chongyun looked at him expressionlessly and asked, "What are your conditions?" Yi Lushui nodded slightly, and the corners of his mouth gradually cracked, revealing a bloodthirsty and cruel sneer. "White-clothed killing god. Hand him over to this emperor. This emperor's name is renowned throughout the entire Shenwu continent, and I'm ranked in the top 3 of all martial saints. However, that wretched white-clothed killing god ruined my plans and slaughtered over 600,000 soldiers under my command. He made this emperor lose all face, so how can this emperor let him live in this world? If I don't kill him with my own hands, how can I swallow this anger?" At the end of his speech, Yi Liushui's face was distorted and his tone was extremely ferocious. Divine Emperor Chongyun looked at him with a sneer and shook his head firmly. "These are your conditions? He, then there's nothing to discuss between us." Yi Liushui's expression suddenly changed, and he frowned. "Why? Don't you want to immediately take back those 20 mines? As a martial saint, do you want to consider personal feelings and give up an easy victory in order to protect the white-clothed killing god? Su Chongyun. If you don't hand over the white-clothed killing god, then don't even think about taking back those 20 mines. Is the white-clothed killing god's life more important than the lives of the 100,000 soldiers and the mines?" A cold and vigorous voice echoed in the night sky above the mountain peak. Divine Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the 8 generals all had complicated expressions as they silently weighed the pros and cons. Seeing everyone's reaction, Yi Lushui revealed a smug sneer. In his opinion, as long as Su Chongyun wasn't an idiot and didn't act on impulse, then he would definitely agree to his conditions. In the pitch-black belly of the mountain, Ji Tianqing sat on the back of the Xitigarbha armor and quietly listened to the conversation on the mountain peak. He heard every word of the conversation between Yi Lushui and Su Chongyun clearly. At this point, he also understood the whole story. When he heard Yi Lushui's question, he couldn't help but sneer. He thought to himself, it seems that Yi Lushui has been forced into a corner by me and hates me to the core. He would rather give up the 20 mines to take my life. He is really vicious. At this time, the Xiaogaba armor transmitted a message to him. Master, Su Chongyun is silent. He is considering whether to betray you in exchange for the 20 mines. This cowardly guy is really a bastard. Master risked his life to snatch the mines and secretly helped Su Chongyun, but he wants to repay kindness with enmity? The Xiaogaba armor was quite agitated. It was extremely angry and despised Su Chongyun's hesitation and consideration. Ji Tianqing was not in a hurry. He transmitted a message to calm it down. You beast, you have protected the Earth Spirit clan for so long. Why are you still so impatient? Don't rush to a conclusion. I watched Su Chongyun grow up. That kid was a loyal person back then. He shouldn't repay kindness with enmity. Moreover, he doesn't even know who the white-clothed killing god is. Even if he wants to make a deal with Yi Lushui, he can't do it. The Xiaogaba armor became more obedient and stopped talking. At the same time, Holy Emperor Chongyun on the mountain peak also spoke. He looked at Yi Lushui expressionlessly and said in a deep voice, Yi Lushui, as the governor guarding the mines, I will not act on impulse. I will put the interests of the Luoshui divine kingdom first. However, we, the people of the Luoshui divine kingdom, will never be vile people who repay kindness with enmity. The white-clothed killing god is a genius. He is willing to risk his life to resolve the crisis for us. He is a true hero. If I hand him over, won't I be cursed for eternity and go down in infamy for thousands of years? Holy Emperor Chongyun's words touched the hearts of Su Chen and the other generals. Everyone straightened their backs and revealed a proud expression. Their expressions were full of approval and support. Holy Emperor Chongyun paused for a moment and continued, in addition, the white-clothed killing god is mysterious. Even I don't know his true identity. Yi Lushui, don't waste your time. It's all in vain. After that, Holy Emperor Chongyun waved his wide sleeves and turned to leave. Yi Lushui frowned fiercely and shouted with a gloomy face, Su Chongyun. Are you really going to give up such a good opportunity? You will regret it. Chapter 1841. Yi Lushui did not expect Divine Emperor Chongyun to reject him so straightforwardly. There was no room for discussion or negotiation. He was filled with unwillingness, and his eyes were red with anger. Murderous intent surged from his body. When Divine Emperor Chongyun turned to leave, he had already made up his mind to make Su Chongyun pay a painful price. He would do his best to guard the 20 mining areas. As long as the people of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom came to invade, he would make sure they did not return. He would kill them all. At the same time, he would do everything he could to find the white-clothed killing god. Just when both sides thought that this negotiation had broken down and could not be salvaged, a young man's voice suddenly sounded from the mountain peak. Divine Emperor Chongyun, please wait. The sudden voice made the mountain peak quiet down. Everyone was stunned for a moment and looked at the ground in unison. Divine Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others also stopped and turned to look at the field. Under everyone's gaze, a figure emerged from the ground and appeared in the open space out of thin air. Whoosh! This was a handsome young man in a white robe who was more than 7 feet tall and had an extraordinary temperament. He held a mysterious sword in his left hand and his right hand was behind his back. His long hair fluttered in the night wind, and he looked indescribably handsome and outstanding. Although he was just standing there casually, he was like a deep abyss and exuded a sacred and noble aura. Everyone's eyes were gathered on him. After seeing his attire, everyone's expression changed, and their eyes widened in shock. It's him. White-clothed killing god. It's him. So he's the white-clothed killing god. This guy actually showed up on his own initiative. Exclamations sounded one after another on the mountain peak. The 9 generals of the Heaven and Divine Kingdom and more than 50 divine guards all stared at the white-clothed young man with a shocked and respectful expression. Yi Liushui's expression also stiffened as he stared at the white-clothed young man. His eyes became cold and deep, and his body exuded a murderous aura. White-clothed killing god. So it's you, you worm. Yi Liushui murmured word by word as he clenched his fists and crushed the jade armrest of the throne. The white-robed youth ignored him. The 8 generals of the Luoshui divine kingdom looked at the white-robed youth with eyes full of gratitude and reverence. Even though the 8 generals were strong, they couldn't control their emotions when they saw the great hero in their hearts. They couldn't help but bow and express their thanks. Only Sacred Emperor Chongyun and Su Chen's expressions were particularly interesting. Holy Emperor Chongyun was stunned for a long time before he came back to his senses. He stared at the white-robed young man with burning eyes and murmured with a complicated tone, "It's you? How was this possible? How could it be, you?" Even though he was a martial sacred realm expert with a heart as calm as still water and a will as firm as steel, he still lost his composure due to the great impact. Su Chen was even more dumbfounded. He had suffered the greatest impact. It took him quite a while to regain his senses. He pointed at the white-robed youth and said with a flushed face, You. Ji Tianqing. Do you know that I've been looking for you for half a month? We are here to negotiate and discuss important military matters. How dare you barge in? Hurry up and leave. You actually pretended to be the white-robed killing god. Do you want to die? In Su Chen's heart, Ji Tianqing was an arrogant person who didn't have much ability. After not seeing him for more than 20 days, he thought that Ji Tianqing had already left Sunset City and gone back to Luotian Mountain. And now, Ji Tianqing had appeared in front of everyone in the form of a white-clothed killing god. This shocking scene caused Su Chen to suffer a huge impact. His mind was in a mess. No matter what, he couldn't connect Ji Tianqing with the white-robed killing god. One was a loathsome and despicable flower in a greenhouse, while the other was a great hero revered by all. The atmosphere on the mountain peak became very complicated and subtle. Ji Tianqing ignored Su Chen and looked calmly at Sacred Emperor Chongyun. Sacred Emperor Chongyun, Yi Liushui is so sincere to negotiate with you. How can you just leave like that? I think his conditions are good. We can sit down and discuss slowly. Ji Tianqing's tone was light and indifferent. It was as if they weren't discussing life and death, but the price of an elixir. Divine Emperor Chongyun immediately frowned and asked in a deep voice, Ji Tianqing. What are you doing? Where have you been for the past 20 days? Ji Tianqing revealed a trace of a smile and said in a playful tone, Where else can I go? Of course, I went to the mining area to kill evil. Sacred Emperor Chongyun raised his eyebrows and asked in shock, You are really the white-robed killing god? It's the real deal. Ji Tianqing smiled as usual. Sacred Emperor Chongyun couldn't believe it. He frowned and looked at Su Chen silently. Su Chen and the 8 generals were also suspicious. They looked at Ji Tianqing carefully. Everyone thought that the white-robed killing god must be a half-step to martial sage. How could he only be a rank 1 cross-calamity stage martial artist? On the other side, the generals of Heaven's and Holy Nation were whispering to each other. Yi Liushui stared coldly at Ji Tianqing and shouted, Brat! You should know the consequences of pretending to be the white-robed killing god in front of me. Ji Tianqing didn't want to waste his breath. Light flashed in his right palm and a ball of golden light appeared. The golden light floated in front of him and it contained hundreds of golden sword tokens. He looked at Yi Liushui with a smile and said slowly, Martial Sage Yi Liushui, I heard that you have a group of lackeys who call themselves the Black Spirit Guards. I originally thought that those black spirit guards were your immortal guards in disguise. However, in the past 20 days, I have killed more than 260 black spirit guards. I found more than 200 golden sword tokens on their bodies. I have seen these tokens before. Only the elites of the Broken Sky Alliance are qualified to have these tokens. Ha ha ha. Martial Sage Yi, you have hidden your strength well. The Broken Sky Alliance, which claims to be free and unrestricted by the holy nations, actually sent a large group of elites to work for you. You have really put in a lot of effort. Although they are dead, their tokens are with me. Do you want me to return them to you? As he spoke, Ji Tianqing picked up the golden ball of light and tossed it in his palm a few times. Yi Lushui and the generals' faces changed drastically. Everyone's eyes turned red and they were dyed with a thick layer of blood. Scarlet flames of killing intent burst out from their bodies. Sage Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen and the others, who were still hesitating a moment ago, also changed their faces and revealed a look of joy. At that moment, they no longer had a trace of doubt. The facts had proven that Ji Tianqing was the legendary white-robed killing god. At that moment, the generals were excited and their spirits were lifted. Chapter 1842. The identity of the white-clothed killing god was finally confirmed. Yi Lushui could no longer sit still. He slowly stood up, and an invisible aura burst out from his body, shattering the golden jade throne. His eyes and face were extremely gloomy, like a glacier. You are indeed the white-clothed killing god. Very good. You have delivered yourself to me, very wise. Yi Lushui murmured in a low voice, his tone was filled with a cold aura of death. As he spoke, he slowly walked towards Ji Tianqing. With every step he took, the murderous aura around his body became stronger. An incomparably heavy pressure quickly condensed into an aura, suppressing towards Ji Tianqing. He could no longer suppress the killing intent in his heart, and he immediately wanted to crush Ji Tianqing into pieces and kill him completely. But at this moment, Holy Emperor Chongyun stepped out, and a violent power burst out from his body, fiercely blasting towards Yi Lushui. Yi Lushui, do you think I don't exist? Boom! The two auras collided fiercely, and a violent blast exploded in the night sky. Ji Tianqing was in the center of the storm, but he was safe and sound. The violent blast spread out, causing more than a dozen generals and many divine guards to stagger, their faces pale. This was just the collision of the auras of two martial sages, and it had such a terrifying power. If two martial sages fought, it would really destroy the heavens and earth, and the sun and moon would lose their light. The collision of the two's auras could be considered evenly matched, and no one could gain the upper hand. Holy Emperor Chongyun stared coldly at Yi Lushui and shouted in a deep voice, Yi Lushui, don't forget the agreement between the two countries. Do you want to start a war with the Luoshui divine nation? If you dare to touch a hair on Ji Tianqing's head, I will lead 1,000,000 troops and flatten the heaven extinction camp. Yi Lushui naturally would not break the rules, and it was even more impossible for him to start a war with the Luoshui divine nation. But his mouth was unforgiving, and he sneered contemptuously, he he he. We haven't fought for 100 years, and you are still so useless, you haven't improved at all. Holy Emperor Chongyun also sneered, and his face was full of disdain, humph. I don't want to argue with you. If you are really so confident, let's exchange a few moves on the Qingming platform some other day. Yi Lushui naturally would not retreat, and he sneered confidently, he, that's good, I have long wanted to teach you a lesson. Seeing that the two martial sages were about to continue arguing, Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said to Yi Lushui, don't forget why you're here tonight. Let's get down to business. As expected, Yi Lushui stopped talking nonsense. He stared at him with sharp eyes and asked, how do you want to talk? Ji Tianqing revealed a smile and said meaningfully, you want my life. Saint Emperor Chongyun wanted to reclaim 20 mining areas. We can compromise and settle this matter with an open and aboveboard bet. Interesting. Yi Lushui sneered and asked, how do you want to bet? Ji Tianqing pointed at the generals behind him and said calmly, you can choose 6 elite experts to fight with me in the arena, and you will be responsible for your own life and death. If I win, you will return the 20 mining areas and lead the army to leave this place. Yi Lushui frowned and asked, then what if you lose? Ji Tianqing sneered and said, since it's a battle of life and death in the arena, then I'll naturally die if I lose. Your wish will be fulfilled. Hearing this, Yi Lushui's eyes flashed with a bright light, and he was quite tempted. He had already agreed to this battle, and he was even a little impatient. But he had always been cunning, so how could he agree so easily? You are confident, but how can I agree to it? Those 200+ black spirit guards have all died under your sword. Do you think this emperor doesn't know your true strength? A playful smile appeared on Ji Tianqing's face as he proudly said, before you make your decision, I need to introduce myself. My surname is Tianqing. I am the white killing god that you hate the most, the #1 genius of the continent, and the #1 god's disciple of the Luoshui divine kingdom. With my identity, you will never dare to kill me, unless you want to bear the wrath of the Luoshui martial god. However, I will bet with you in public, and you will be responsible for your own life and death. You can kill me, and you will not have to bear the revenge of the Luoshui martial god and the Luoshan mountain. What do you think? Think about it. Yi Liushui's expression changed drastically, and his eyes widened as he stared at Ji Tianqing. After a moment, he came back to his senses and said, so it is you. You are the Ji Tianqing who was favored by the old man of the divine ruins at the Three Kingdoms exchange. After knowing Ji Tianqing's identity, he was even more determined to kill him. If he could get rid of the #1 god's disciple of the Luoshui divine kingdom openly, he would be able to kill a huge threat, and it would be a great blow to the Luoshui divine kingdom. Yi Lushui was very tempted and wanted to agree immediately. However, he pretended to be reluctant and said in a low voice, 6 is not enough. You are the infamous white killing god and the #1 genius of the continent. How can ordinary people compare to you? I want to pick 10 elite experts to bet with you. Do you dare to accept? Ji Tianqing had expected him to say this, and he said without hesitation, at most 8. Otherwise, there is no need to talk. Deal. Yi Lushui nodded and agreed without hesitation, and he sneered. Divine Emperor Chongyun immediately frowned when he saw this, and he hurriedly spoke to stop them. Ji Tianqing. You can't do this. You can't agree to it. Ji Tianqing turned to look at him and asked with a frown, I will bet my life with Yi Lushui. Why can't I? Holy Emperor Chongyun quickly waved his hand and explained, that's not what I meant. Ji Tianqing, I have neglected you before. Please don't take it to heart. However, you shouldn't be so reckless. You should know that in my heart, you are more important than the 20 mines. Before you came, Granny Long had repeatedly warned me not to let anything happen to you no matter what. If anything happens to you, how am I going to explain it to Granny Long? How am I going to explain it to the Divine Master? You can't bet with Yi Lushui. I will think of a way to take back those mines. I won't allow you to bet with your life. Ji Tianqing saw his sincerity, so he explained, Holy Emperor Chongyun, please trust me this once. This is the fastest way to solve this problem. Yi Lushui will definitely defend the 20 mines. You will have to spend at least a year to take them back. In the process, at least hundreds of thousands of soldiers will die in battle, and we will lose even more resources. I am the white killing god, and I am invincible below the martial sage realm. If I don't have full confidence, why would I bet with my life? Holy Emperor Chongyun hesitated when he heard Yi Liushui's confident tone. Ji Tianqing, don't be anxious. I will send a message to Granny Long and the Divine Master and ask them to make a decision. Ji Tianqing waved his hand and said decisively, no need. There is not enough time. Chapter 1843. Ji Tianqing's persistence and stubbornness made Holy Emperor Chongyun helpless. Just as he said, he was willing to bet his life for the 20 mines. Why not? Moreover, he had full confidence and certainty. Holy Emperor Chongyun was silent for a moment and could only nod. However, he stared at Ji Tianqing with a solemn expression and said in a serious tone, Ji Tianqing, I agree to your request and allow you to bet with Yi Lushui. However, no matter what, you have to remember to put your own safety first. Your life is more important than the 20 mines and 100,000 soldiers. The Luoshui divine nation has billions of people and tens of millions of brave soldiers, but only you. If something really happens to you, I won't be able to absolve myself from the blame. I will definitely report everything to the Divine Master and willingly accept my punishment. Ji Tianqing looked at him deeply and smiled. He nodded and said, don't worry, nothing will happen. Holy Emperor Chongyun did not say anything else and looked at Ji Tianqing solemnly. He said loudly, Yi Lushui, Ji Tianqing is ready. You can choose your elites. You can choose any 8 of the generals and soldiers behind you. Tonight, we will settle our grudges on the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain. Don't even think of playing any tricks. Yi Lushui stroked the white hair on his temples and sneered contemptuously, ha 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 ha. The 8 elites under my command are enough to kill him. What tricks do I need? The White God of Slaughter, the #1 disciple of the Luoshui divine nation, the #1 genius of the continent. What a dazzling title, what a glorious battle record. It's a pity that he will be buried here tonight. Su Chongyun, you should inform the setting sun city to prepare for his funeral. Holy Emperor Chongyun did not want to argue with him. He took out a disc array from his interspatial ring and placed it on the ground. Then, he waved his hand and cast a spell to set up a defensive array on the peak of the mountain. He wanted to build a temporary arena. Yi Lushui did not waste any more time. He turned to look at the 9 generals behind him and frowned. These 9 people were all elite generals of the Heaven and Divine Nation. Each of them was a veteran general who had won hundreds of battles, and all of them had strength above the 5th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. Among them, the weakest was in the 5th stage of the Crossing Tribulation realm, while the strongest was in the 8th stage of the Crossing Tribulation realm. It was the white-haired Pang Shui. In terms of overall strength, these generals were much stronger than the Black Spirit Guards. Because of this, Yi Lushui was so sure that Ji Tianqing was dead for sure. After a moment of consideration, he pointed at the weakest middle-aged general and said, you stay. The other 8 generals will join the battle. The general whose name was called immediately revealed an expression of relief as he heaved a huge sigh of relief. Although he was loyal to the Heaven Extinction God Nation, he hoped to win this bet and kill Ji Tianqing for revenge. However, he was afraid of the fierce reputation of the white-robed killing god, so he did not dare to fight with Ji Tianqing. Otherwise, he would lose his life. Yes, Lord Saint Emperor. The man bowed respectfully and quickly took 2 steps back. The faces of the other 8 generals were a little solemn, and there was a hint of worry in their eyes. Yi Lushui looked at the 8 generals and instructed them with his divine sense, when the life-and-death battle begins, you will challenge Ji Tianqing one by one. You must do your best and use all your means. The first 5 people to challenge Ji Tianqing, even if they can't kill him, they must persist until the end and try their best to consume his spiritual power. The last 3 people to challenge him, even if you have to sacrifice your lives and perish together with him, you must complete the task. You can only win this battle, you can't lose. If the 8 generals can't kill Ji Tianqing, then you must commit suicide to atone for your sins. The bodies of the 8 generals stiffened. After a moment of stupefaction, their eyes gradually became fiery and determined. Waves of firm and scorching killing intent burst out from their bodies and gradually condensed into dark red flames in the night sky. That was the flame of killing intent, condensed by the thought of death. Yi Lushui did not say anything more. He turned around and began to cast spells, setting up a defensive array with Saint Emperor Chongyun. Soon, half an hour had passed. A saint-level array with a radius of 10 miles was set up by Yi Lushui and Saint Emperor Chongyun. The colorful semicircular light shield was like a huge canopy in the sky, but also like a huge bowl that was placed upside down on the flat ground of the mountain peak. The temporary arena was completed. No matter how Ji Tianqing and the 8 generals fought in the array, the shockwaves from the battle would not be able to destroy the saint-level array and would not spread out. Under Saint Emperor Chongyun's request, Yi Lushui bowed to heaven and earth with him and swore an oath. After the oath was made, heaven and earth would be the witness. Whoever violated it would be punished by the heavens and spurned by the world. After the ceremony, Ji Tianqing was the first to step into the formation. His left hand was behind his back, and his right hand held the sword of burial of heaven, pointing diagonally to the ground. He stood in the middle of the arena elegantly. Who wants to die first? A confident and majestic roar sounded, spreading across the entire mountain peak and reverberating in the night sky. Outside the array, Saint Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the 8 Luo Shui generals all looked at him with burning eyes, their blood surging. On the other side, Yi Lushui, the 9 Heaven End Realm generals, and more than 50 divine guards were also filled with righteous indignation, staring at Ji Tianqing with murderous intent. Let me have a go at you. A burly man with a full beard jumped out first. Although he was 10 feet tall and as strong as a black bear, he looked a little clumsy. But in fact, he had the strength of a 6th-level Tribulation Transcendence Realm cultivator, and his movements were very fast. Swoosh! With a flash of golden light, he crossed 1,000 feet, entered the defensive array, and landed on the arena. His figure only paused for a moment, and then he rushed toward Ji Tianqing without hesitation. A 5-foot-long saber appeared in his palm, and the saber light filled the sky. Kid, you're eager to die. I'll fulfill your wish now. Azure Dragon strikes water. 18 dazzling gray saber lights, like 18,000 feet long azure dragons, fell from the sky in a violent and shocking manner toward Ji Tianqing. This person followed Yi Lushui's instructions and did not hold back at all. He used all his strength and used a secret technique. When the 18 azure dragon saber lights slashed down, even a 10,000-foot mountain would be smashed into pieces. However, Ji Tianqing stood proudly in the arena, as majestic as a mountain, and his expression did not change at all. He ignored the 18 azure dragon saber lights and stared at the burly man. He suddenly raised his right hand and stabbed out with his sword as fast as a stream of light. Piercing sword. A dot of cold light suddenly appeared, flashing in the night sky. The next moment, the cold light passed through the many azure dragon saber lights, broke through the burly man's defense, and bloomed on his chest. Boom! A dazzling cold light, like a mushroom cloud, suddenly appeared in the night sky. A deafening sound immediately exploded on the mountain peak and spread for hundreds of miles. Chapter 1844. A large cluster of dark red blood slowly sprinkled in the night sky. The fragments of the golden armor and the 5-foot-long dark golden saber also fell from the night sky to the ground. At the same time, 18 azure dragon saber lights fell and slashed the ground. However, Ji Tianqing had already teleported away. He stood indifferently in the corner of the array and looked at this scene expressionlessly. Boom! 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 A series of muffled noises burst out. The mountain peak trembled violently, and more than a dozen huge pits were blasted out of the ground, splashing dust all over the sky. Fortunately, there was a defensive array to protect them, blocking the violent shock waves. Otherwise, the consequences would be unimaginable. Outside the array, the dozens of experts from the two countries were all dumbfounded, as if they had been petrified. Except for the two martial sages, everyone widened their eyes in horror and stared at Ji Tianqing in disbelief. No one could believe this result. The Heaven End Realm General, who had tried his best to use his unique killing move, was actually killed by Ji Tianqing in one move. This was too terrifying. Since ancient times, which one of the first stage of the Tribulation Realm could kill a sixth stage expert in one move? Not a single one. Ji Tianqing walked slowly through the smoke and dust and returned to the arena. He said indifferently, "No matter how many tricks you have, you can't beat my sword. What's the use?" There was no contempt or arrogance in his calm and indifferent voice. He was just stating a fact. But when Yi Lushui and the Heaven End Realm generals heard this, they were so ashamed and angry that they trembled all over. He was too arrogant. He was clearly mocking the burly man, who was jumping around like a clown, but was killed in one move. It was simply a great irony. But this was the truth. No matter how angry Yi Lushui and the Heaven End Realm generals were, they could not refute it. Holy Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others all came to their senses. Everyone's eyes lit up as they looked at Ji Tianqing. They all cheered excitedly. Especially Su Chen, who was stimulated by Ji Tianqing's powerful and domineering words and deeds. His blood was boiling and his face was flushed. This was the god of killing in white in his heart. Cold, powerful, and merciless. In a trance, the figure of the white-robed young man who had played chess with him in the pine tree courtyard gradually merged with the Ji Tianqing in front of him. Su Chen's heart was once again filled with guilt, and a bitter smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. From the beginning until the end, he didn't take me seriously and even treated me as a weak junior. What's laughable is that I was so stupid. Only today did I realize that he had concealed himself so deeply. I should have thought about it back then. How could someone who could set up the 9 dragons burning heaven layout be an ordinary person? Just as Su Chen was in a trance, mocking himself and regretting his actions, the situation changed again. Ji Tianqing looked at Yi Lushui and the others and said expressionlessly, "Next." The bodies of the 7 generals who had yet to enter the field all stiffened. Hesitation and fear appeared in their eyes. After all, the scene just now was too shocking. Ji Tianqing's actions and aura were too domineering and overbearing. The 7 generals were all shocked and felt fear from the bottom of their hearts. They didn't even dare to look directly into his eyes. Everyone was hesitant. No one dared to make a sound, let alone take the initiative to stand out. Yi Lushui's face turned even uglier. In his anger, he pointed at the first general on the left and ordered, "You, enter the field." The general who was named was a skinny, dark-skinned, middle-aged man with a mustache in the shape of a handlebar mustache. His body suddenly trembled, and a touch of despair flashed in his eyes. He had no choice. He only had the strength of the 6th level of the Crossing Tribulation Realm. He had already expected his fate. He would most likely be killed in a second. However, military orders were absolute. How could he dare to disobey? If he was afraid of the battle, Ji Tianqing wouldn't have to kill him. Yi Lushui would kill him first. In desperation, the mustached general had to bite the bullet and step into the large formation under the sympathetic eyes of his colleagues. Ji Tianqing. "You damned demon, I'll fight it out with you." After the mustached general stepped into the large formation, he unfolded the black cloak on his shoulders and 2 magic treasures appeared in each of his hands. One was a blood-red sword, and the other was a green ancient bronze cauldron. Chi of heaven and earth, 7 cultivators, dust rises from the soil, smoke rises from the dust. Heart of heaven and soul of earth, bury the past and destroy the present. Heart and soul sword of slaughter. The mustached general chanted the incantation. His body surged with five-colored spiritual light and expanded to a height of 300 meters. The black cloak behind him fluttered and released thousands of five-colored light beams, forming a large net of heaven and earth to cover Ji Tianqing. The sword in his hand burst out thousands of blood-red sword lights and stabbed toward Ji Tianqing at a high speed. The ancient bronze cauldron also released an invisible divine soul attack. Like a dozen long spears, it blasted toward Ji Tianqing from all directions. In an instant, the arena within a radius of 10 miles became dazzling and full of a violent aura that could destroy heaven and earth. The mustached general used his strongest magic treasure and secret technique. He did not hesitate to consume 30 years of his cultivation to use this move that could shock heaven and earth and make ghosts and gods weep. He did not expect to kill Ji Tianqing. As long as he could seriously injure him, his sacrifice would be worth it. At this moment, Yi Lushui and the other heaven-end grade generals were staring at Ji Tianqing, looking forward to the scene of his blood splattering everywhere. The hearts of Saint Emperor Chongyun and the other Luo Shui generals were also in their throats, and they revealed extremely worried expressions. Only Ji Tianqing's expression did not change, and he still looked calm. Those who show off their skills are worthless. No matter how many spells you have, no matter how many divine abilities you have, I will destroy them all with one slash of my sword. He shouted calmly and held the sword of burial of heaven with both hands, slashing out with all his strength. Heaven-splitting sword. The sword of burial of heaven burst out with a golden light that shot into the sky, instantly forming a giant sword that was hundreds of feet long. It descended from the sky and slashed at the mustached general. This sword contained all of Ji Tianqing's magic power and all of his essence, energy, and spirit. It was an extremely ferocious sword, but it was also an extremely sincere sword. It was unstoppable. Kaboom! The golden sword slashed through the night sky, instantly shattering the sword light and five-colored light pillars that filled the sky. It destroyed the invisible soul spear and exploded with a thunderous sound. In the next moment, the mustached general's face was filled with despair and horror. Before he could dodge, he was struck by the giant golden sword. Bam! He was hit by the giant sword, and his body exploded with a bang, turning into dozens of pieces that scattered in all directions with blood. The giant sword slashed the ground, causing the giant peak to tremble. A 10-mile-long ravine appeared on the ground, like an abyss. Endless smoke and dust rose into the sky, causing the array to be chaotic. After a long time, the smoke and dust in the sky gradually dissipated. Only when the experts looked at the field did they see what was going on. Ji Tianqing stood above the ravine, unscathed. His white robe fluttered in the wind, spotless. The mustached general had disappeared, and there were dozens of pieces of flesh scattered on the ground, as well as some armor fragments, a treasure sword, and a bronze cauldron. Chapter 1845. The second tribulation stage powerhouse to challenge the stage was still unable to escape the fate of being killed instantly. When the dozens of powerhouses saw this scene, their expressions changed drastically, revealing incomparably shocked expressions. Su Chen and several Luo Shui generals were filled with excitement, their blood boiling as they cheered for Ji Tianqing. The Tianjue generals and the divine guards were aghast, their expressions extremely ugly. In their opinion, when Ji Tianqing killed the first general with one sword strike, there might be some element of luck involved. However, when the second general stepped onto the stage, he was also instantly killed by his sword. There was absolutely no luck involved, this was absolutely valiant strength. The 6 generals who had yet to participate in the battle had fear in their eyes, and their hearts were also filled with fear. Ji Tianqing's strength was beyond everyone's imagination. Yi Liushui's face was extremely gloomy, and his gaze was as sharp as a sword as he stared at Ji Tianqing, wishing he could tear him into pieces. With his back facing the 6 generals, he ordered without looking back, Hong Dingshan, go on stage. He knew that the 6 generals were timid and did not dare to take the initiative to challenge the stage. Therefore, he directly called out the name, making it impossible for them to retreat. The general named Hong Dingshan was a thin old man with white hair. He wore golden armor, a red tasseled helmet, and a scarlet cloak on his shoulders. Being called out by Yi Lushui in public, his body stiffened, and his eyes revealed a touch of despair. But after all, he was a veteran general who had experienced hundreds of battles. He quickly regained his calm, and his eyes became firm. Swoosh! With a flash of brilliance, Hong Dingshan turned into a stream of light and drilled into the array. He remembered Yi Lushui's instructions and did not delay any time, nor did he give Ji Tianqing a chance to breathe, lest he recover his spiritual power. As soon as he rushed into the arena, he used his ultimate move with all his might, releasing a killer move that could destroy the world. The dazzling light of the spell filled the array with a radius of 10 miles, causing the entire arena to become chaotic. Ji Tianqing's figure was drowned out. Many Ji Tianqing generals were secretly praying that Hong Dingshan could create a miracle and severely injure Ji Tianqing. But at this moment, a dazzling giant sword of golden light suddenly lit up on the arena. With the power to split the heavens and the earth, it cut through the light and shadows that were all over the sky and hit Hong Dingshan hard. Broken Moon Sword. Boom! Amidst a deafening boom, the saber light and sword shadows that filled the sky collapsed and exploded. Hong Dingshan was also sent flying back by the giant sword. His body was covered in blood as he crashed into the defensive array and rolled on the ground. He was already heavily injured. There was a hideous wound on his chest, and blood was gushing out. His armor had also been destroyed, and his cloak had also been torn to shreds, falling to the ground. His appearance was extremely miserable. But he was still alive. He wasn't killed on the spot. Yi Lushui and Tianju's generals were all shocked, their hearts filled with hope. Great! Hong Dingshan didn't disappoint us. Like I said, how could that bastard keep insta-killing his opponents? The facts have proven that the Holy Emperor's strategy was right. That kid's strength is already weakening. However, just as everyone was getting excited, Ji Tianqing struck again. 7-star sword. The Burial of Heaven swung the sword and burst out 7 dazzling golden sword light. With infinite divine power, it slashed toward Hong Dingshan. Hong Dingshan was seriously injured and was using his power to suppress his injuries. Seeing the huge golden sword coming at him, he desperately got up and brandished his dark green sword, which filled the sky with sword light. Bam, bam, bam. A series of muffled sounds burst out, reverberating fiercely in the night sky. The sword light that filled the sky was smashed into pieces. Hong Dingshan was also hit by the giant sword of golden light. His body exploded into countless pieces, and a large rain of blood burst out. After a long time, when the arena regained its clarity, the battle was already over. Hong Dingshan's outcome was the same as the previous 2 generals. He was also beheaded, and his divine soul was destroyed. He died on the spot. The only difference was that the previous 2 generals had been insta-killed by the sword, while Hong Dingshan was only killed by the second move. When the crowd saw the situation in the arena, they were in an uproar. They were shocked and horrified. Holy Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others were even more excited. They had more confidence in Ji Tianqing. Holy Emperor Chongyun, in particular, had gradually believed in Ji Tianqing's words. I am the white-robed killing god, invincible below the martial sage realm. When he heard this confident and even arrogant statement, he didn't believe it at all. However, now that the truth was right before his eyes, he had to believe it. Holy Emperor Chongyun looked deeply at Ji Tianqing and muttered to himself, no wonder Granny Long reminded me so many times. No wonder he could be favored and valued by the Divine Master. Such a demonic talent is rare in the world. It is my great fortune to have this person's help. At that moment, Yi Lushui ordered with a gloomy expression, "Do Qinghan, enter the arena." Do Qinghan, who was called out, stiffened for a moment. Then, he stepped into the defensive array with an aura of facing death unflinchingly. The fourth battle had begun. Do Qinghan was determined to die. He didn't hesitate to use 100 years of cultivation and lifespan to use a forbidden secret technique. Monstrous blood light surged and mixed with thousands of five-colored spiritual lights. They turned into dazzling spell shadows that filled the entire arena. Ji Tianqing used the Big Dipper steps. His body was like a dragon, and his sword light was like lightning as he fought fiercely with Do Qinghan. Piercing sword. Swing sword. Heaven-breaking sword. In just 10 breaths, the two sides had exchanged 3 moves. Saber light and sword shadows illuminated the pitch-black night sky. Violent and devastating shockwaves also fiercely bombarded the defensive formation, causing a loud explosion. Do Qinghan was an expert who had gone through 7 heavenly tribulations. He was a famous martial lord. He was stronger than the previous 3 generals. After exchanging 3 moves with Ji Tianqing, he still hadn't been killed. He was still tenaciously holding on. However, he was already seriously injured. One of his arms and one of his legs had been cut off. His body was covered in blood, making him look like a man made of blood. Ji Tianqing didn't give him a chance to breathe, nor did he give him time to suppress his injuries. Heavenly Dragon Palm. With a furious roar, Ji Tianqing raised his palms and slammed them toward Do Qinghan. Endless golden light surged out of his palms. It condensed into 2,000-meter-long golden divine dragons. They blasted toward Do Qinghan with the power to destroy the world. Boom! Boom! In the next moment, 2 deafening explosions resounded through the peak of Mount Drifting Cloud. Do Qinghan's body exploded. His divine soul collapsed, and he was blown to smithereens on the spot. 2 deep pits were also blasted into the ground. Smoke and dust filled the sky. An incomparably violent golden shockwave spread out in all directions, violently crashing against the defensive array. The 5-colored light barrier in a radius of 10 miles shook violently, rippling with layers of ripples. Such a shocking scene caused the eyes of all the experts to be dazzled, and their hearts surged with emotion as they watched. Su Chen and the other Luo Shui generals cheered excitedly once again. The generals and divine guards of the heaven and divine nation looked as if they had lost their parents. They were dejected and in despair. Chapter 1846. Ji Tianqing won 4 battles in a row. The 4 heaven and realm generals who fought with him were all killed on the spot. However, he was still safe and sound. He was neither injured nor tired. Such a result brought an extremely heavy blow to the experts of the heaven and God nation. The 4 generals who had yet to appear were already intimidated by Ji Tianqing. They were completely terrified. Yi Lushui was also incomparably angry, and his heart was filled with deep regret. If he had known that Ji Tianqing's strength was so terrifying, he would never have agreed to fight with him. However, what was done could not be undone. He had made an oath with Holy Emperor Chongyun in public, and it was already impossible to stop halfway. No matter what, this battle had to continue. After a moment of silence, Yi Lushui ordered in a low voice, "General Hua, it's your turn." After saying that, he secretly instructed, "Defend with all your strength. Stall for time at all costs and consume his strength." Obviously, Yi Lushui could not hold back and had to teach him the strategy. General Hua, who was wearing golden armor and holding a dark golden spear, nodded with a complicated expression and stepped into the arena. The 5th battle soon began. General Hua was not in a hurry to attack, and used all his strength to defend. He held an octagonal copper furnace in his left hand, releasing a yellow light shield to protect himself. He waved a dark golden spear in his right hand, and golden spear shadows filled the sky, forming a huge shield wall. Ji Tianqing attacked 3 times in a row, using exquisite sword techniques, but he did not achieve any effect. Even if he could break through General Hua's defense, he could not seriously injure him. General Hua did not fight him head-on at all. He just wandered around and constantly used different defensive methods. Everyone could see that General Hua was deliberately stalling for time, trying to consume Ji Tianqing's magic power. He was a 7th-level crossing tribulation stage expert, and it was very difficult for Ji Tianqing to kill him quickly. Su Chen and several Luo Shui generals all showed indignant expressions, and they all cursed the Heaven End Realm people for being despicable and shameless. The Heaven End Realm generals and the Immortal Army looked much more relaxed, and their mood was much calmer. Although the previous situation was critical, they now saw hope of winning. Soon, 100 breaths had passed. Ji Tianqing continued to attack General Hua with more than a dozen moves. He continued to break down General Hua's defenses, leaving him covered in wounds and blood. Finally, he found a flaw in General Hua's defense and decisively used his trump card. White Tiger Sacred Sword. The Burial of Heaven sword swelled to a height of 3,000 meters, emitting a world-destroying divine might. Ji Tianqing's body turned into golden light as well. He merged with the sword of Burial of Heaven and slashed at General Hua. Boom! Amidst the deafening noise, General Hua was cut into pieces by the giant sword. Blood splattered everywhere. The huge 5-colored light barrier was completely filled by the holy golden light and became dazzling. The entire drifting cloud mountain was trembling violently, and the 5-colored light barrier was also shaking violently, as if it couldn't bear the burden. After a long time, the dazzling golden light within the light barrier dissipated. A huge crater appeared on the ground, and Ji Tianqing's figure appeared, standing above the crater. He was still safe and sound. His clothes were neat and tidy, and he held the sword of Burial of Heaven in his right hand. The 5th battle was still won by Ji Tianqing. Such a shocking result was enough to shock everyone present. But everyone was shocked numb. Yi Lushui called out the next name with a gloomy face. General Du, it's your turn. The 6th general stepped into the ring. His strength was the same as General Hua's, at the 7th level of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. He followed General Hua's example and didn't take the initiative to attack. Instead, he used all his defensive means. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing sneered mockingly. He didn't take the initiative to attack either. Instead, he slowly adjusted his breathing and took out 2 pills in front of everyone to quickly recover his dermic power. Yi Lushui and the other Heaven End Realm generals' faces stiffened. Their eyes were filled with anger. Damn bastard! He didn't take the initiative to attack. How despicable! How can this guy be so thick-skinned? He doesn't have the demeanor of an expert at all. Is he still the white-clothed killing god that makes people tremble in fear? He's too hateful. He actually adjusted his breathing in front of everyone and even took pills. He's provoking and mocking us. Originally, everyone thought that Ji Tianqing was an arrogant white-clothed killing god. Only by using thunderous means to kill his opponent was worthy of his reputation and momentum. But he also played tricks and stalled for time with his opponent. This made Yi Lushui's strategy useless. If he continued to stall for time and waited for Ji Tianqing to recover his dermic power, then the deaths and efforts of the previous generals would be meaningless. Therefore, Yi Lushui made a prompt decision and shouted angrily, "General Du, what are you waiting for? Attack with all your strength. Don't give him a chance to breathe." General Du could only obey and attack with all his strength. The result was obvious. He took the initiative to attack, which was exactly what Ji Tianqing wanted. After a short 20 breaths, the two sides exchanged 7 moves, and General Du was killed by Ji Tianqing on the spot. The 6th battle was over. Next, the 7th general appeared. This person had the strength of the 8th stage of the crossing tribulation realm. He was as powerful and experienced as Pang Shui. He and Pang Shui were Yi Liushui's last hope. However, he neither dared to stall for time nor attack with all his strength. His situation and mentality were very awkward. He could only test the waters by attacking and fighting with Ji Tianqing while moving around. The two sides fought back and forth and gradually used all their strength. The colorful brilliance of magic filled the whole light shield and illuminated half of the night sky. Dull loud noises and explosions were constantly transmitted in the night sky and echoed endlessly. After a full quarter of an hour, the two sides exchanged hundreds of moves before the winner was decided. The general was seriously injured and on the verge of death. Not only his legs were broken, but his whole body was also covered in blood and his divine soul was seriously injured. But he knew how to endure and actually admitted defeat at the critical moment. Although this was a life-and-death battle, it was allowed to admit defeat, so the opponent could no longer kill. Unless one side refused to admit defeat, the other side could kill him and end the battle. The 7th battle was still won by Ji Tianqing. He was not injured, but he had consumed a lot of magic power. His face was a little pale and there were beads of sweat on his forehead. Under the condition that he was not injured, winning 7 battles in a row was definitely a record that would attract the attention of the world. No matter what the final result was, tonight's life-and-death battle on the top of Drifting Cloud Mountain would be spread throughout the 2 divine kingdoms and become a legend in the martial arts world. Ji Tianqing's title of the white-robed killing god, the title of the number 1 genius, and the invincible record of winning 7 battles in a row would be known by hundreds of millions of martial artists. He would be respected and worshipped by the world. At this moment, there was no need for him to say anything more. Holy Emperor Chongyun, Yi Lushui, and all the powerhouses present were sure of one thing. Ji Tianqing was really invincible below the martial sage realm. Since ancient times, he could be called the number 1 genius. Chapter 1847. The mountain peak was silent for a long time. All the experts had mixed feelings. Holy Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others were naturally elated and excited. They had already seen victory. In their opinion, Ji Tianqing had already won 7 battles in a row. It was certain that he would defeat the 8th general. Yi Lushui and the remaining 2 generals all had extremely ugly expressions on their faces. The 50-odd divine guards were also demoralized. Their hearts were filled with pessimism and indignation. 6 generals had been killed and 1 had admitted defeat. Such a tragic result could only set off Ji Tianqing's brilliance. Until now, only Pang Shui had not appeared. No one thought that he had a chance of winning. Pang Shui, whose hair and beard were all white, looked at Ji Tianqing with bright eyes. A strong fighting spirit surged out of his body. His expression became more and more determined. Although he was old and looked like he was about to die, he had been a veteran general. He had led more than 1 million troops and had fought thousands of battles in his life. He had rarely been defeated. Tonight, it was still a bloody battle. It was also his battle. No matter how strong his opponent was, he would not back down even if he knew that his chances of winning were slim. After taking a deep breath, Pang Shui swung the cloak behind him. His right hand pressed on the hilt of the sword at his waist as he walked toward the arena. However, Yi Lushui suddenly turned around and stopped him. Pang Shui. Yi Lushui looked straight at him. His voice was low and cold. Pang Shui stopped and bowed. Please give me your orders, Holy Emperor. Yi Lushui slowly stretched out his hands and held Pang Shui's arms to help him up. A faint golden light appeared in his palm and quietly entered Pang Shuai's palm. Pang Shuai was stunned and looked at Yi Lushui in confusion. Yi Lushui secretly said, "This is the last battle. No matter what the result is, I don't want Ji Tianqing to survive. Just now, I gave you the soul-splitting bow. At the critical moment, you have to use it to shoot Ji Tianqing." Pang Shuai shuddered as deep surprise filled his eyes. He said in disbelief, "Saint Emperor, the soul-splitting bow is your natal saint artifact. Su Chongyun is watching. If I take out the god-splitting bow, he will definitely recognize it." Yi Lushui shook his head and said, "I don't have time to think about it. I changed the appearance of the god-splitting bow. Furthermore, I will not secretly cast any spells. This bow is completely under your control. Even if Su Zhongyun was suspicious, as long as there was no conclusive evidence, there was nothing he could do to me. Even if you sacrifice your life for the God Nation, being able to take Ji Tianqing's life is a great contribution. Go." Pang Shuai looked at him with a complicated expression. He cupped his hands and said solemnly, "Lord Saint Emperor, I will not let you down." With that, Pang Shuai turned around and flew across the night sky, entering the defensive array. He had just arrived at the center of the ring when he saw Ji Tianqing looking at him with a sneer. His heart suddenly skipped a beat, and he vaguely became alert and vigilant. "Sure enough," Ji Tianqing said in a mocking tone, "you are the last seedling. Yi Lushui must have specially instructed you and given you some secret weapon, right?" Pang Shuai frowned and said expressionlessly, "Ben Shuai doesn't understand what you are talking about." There was no doubt that he would never admit it. Ji Tianqing's face was full of disdain as he said contemptuously, "Ha ha ha. Despicable people only know how to do despicable and shameless things." Pang Shuai did not dare to expose himself. He sneered and asked, "Boy, weren't you very arrogant just now? Why are you so scared when it's Ben Shuai's turn to fight? Since you are so afraid of Ben Shuai, don't wait for Ben Shuai to fight. Why don't you admit defeat and surrender?" Ji Tianqing raised his eyebrows and sneered with a strange expression, "I'm afraid? That's right, I'm afraid. I'm afraid that you will be turned into dregs and your despicable blood will stain my white robe." Pang Shuai's white eyebrows straightened, and his body surged with killing intent. He roared like a tiger, "Boy, you are too arrogant. Ben Shuai will take your dog life right now." As his voice fell, his body bloomed with blood-red flames. He brazenly pulled out the sword at his waist and charged at Ji Tianqing without any regard for his own safety. Killing one is a crime. Killing 10,000 is a hero. Killing 9 million is a hero among heroes. Great rebellion of life sword. Pang Shuai shouted in a dignified tone. He held the blood-red sword with both hands and slashed out 3 huge blood-red swords that were hundreds of meters long. Swish swish swish. The blood-red swords cut through the night sky, carrying endless killing intent. The blood-red light rolled down from the sky and enveloped Ji Tianqing. Pang Shuai had killed millions of people in his life. He was the most famous general and commander of the Heaven's End God Nation. His ferocity was second only to Yi Lushui. This great rebellion of life sword was his proudest killing move. It was the strongest killing move that he had honed through thousands of massacres. The blood-red sword light contained a sword intent that could slaughter the world. It was extremely dangerous and terrifying. Ordinary people would be scared out of their wits by the sword intent before being hit by the sword light. Even though Ji Tianqing was an unparalleled prodigy, he was also oppressed by the sword intent. His divine soul and consciousness were somewhat shaken. At this moment, he was even more eager to condense the sword intent as soon as possible. "Breaking Sun Sword!" he shouted angrily. His left hand formed a sword seal, and his right hand waved the sword of burial of heaven. 9 giant swords of golden light that were hundreds of meters long slashed out with unparalleled power. This was the seventh sword of the 9 swords of burial of heaven. Before this, Ji Tianqing had never cultivated this sword technique. But when he was going through the tribulation, he had awakened Kenshin's memories. After fusing the memories, he had mastered thousands of secret techniques. Among them was the 9 swords of burial of heaven. Bang! 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 In the next moment, the 9 huge golden swords clashed with the great defying life sword, and a series of earth-shattering sounds exploded. The 12 sword lights collapsed at the same time, turning into thousands of golden and blood-red fragments that filled the entire arena. The area within a 10-mile radius turned into a world of gold and red. It was chaotic and blurry. The destructive shockwave hit the 5-colored light barrier, causing it to shake violently. The entire drifting cloud mountain trembled. But the battle in the array didn't stop. Ji Tianqing and Pang Shuai were both pushed back 100 steps to the edge of the array. Pang Shuai took this opportunity to use his trump card. A golden light flashed in his hand, and a dark golden bow appeared. This bow was 6 feet long, and the body of the bow was dark golden. There were 9 dragons and phoenixes carved on it, making it look extremely sacred. The strange thing was that this god-splitting bow only had the body of the bow. There was no bowstring or arrow. Pang Shuai held the god-splitting bow in his left hand and grabbed at the air with his right hand. Endless Dharma power surged out of his palm. Suddenly, a dark golden arrow that was 3 feet long appeared out of thin air. He stared at Ji Tianqing with a serious expression and used all his strength to pull the invisible bowstring. He poured all his power and energy into this arrow. An extremely dangerous and invisible murderous aura locked onto Ji Tianqing's divine soul. Chapter 1848. The dark golden arrow hadn't been fired yet. It was only aimed at Ji Tianqing, but it made his body stiffen and his mind tremble. The divine artifact god-splitting bow was indeed powerful. Ji Tianqing stared at Pang Shuai fiercely. Cold murderous intent surged out of his body. That bow is definitely a divine artifact. He instantly realized that the golden divine bow in Pang Shuai's hand was most likely the secret weapon that Yi Lushui had given him. Without any hesitation, he made a prompt decision and used all his strength to perform the ultimate skill of the Dharma body of heaven and earth. An invisible divine power burst out from his body, connecting the sky and the earth. Within a radius of 1,000 miles, the boundless power of heaven and earth madly converged towards him, condensing into a thick 5-colored shield. At the same time, he held the sword of burial of heaven in front of him. Outside the array, Divine Emperor Chongyun was stunned when he saw Pang Shuai take out a golden bow. When he felt the terrifying aura of the golden bow, his expression changed. "There's something wrong with that golden bow." Divine Emperor Chongyun frowned and thought. Pang Shuai didn't seem to have a bow. Only Yi Lushui had a divine artifact god-splitting bow. He had once killed a martial saint with 1 arrow. Could it be that the golden bow? Divine Emperor Chongyun's body stiffened. His eyes widened in shock. He realized that something was wrong and wanted to stop him. However, it was too late. Pang Shuai's power exploded to the extreme. He finally let go of his right hand and released the dark golden arrow. Ji Tianqing. Go to hell. Whoosh. The 3-foot-long dark golden arrow shot toward Ji Tianqing with an invincible and all-annihilating divine might. Wherever the golden arrow passed, the night sky was pierced, and cracks appeared in the space around it. The power of a divine artifact was enough to tear the sky apart and reveal the dark void. At this moment, the dark golden arrow seemed to have slowed down by 10 times. Under everyone's gaze, it went straight for Ji Tianqing's forehead. Divine Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others were all shocked. They widened their eyes anxiously and cried out in grief. On the other hand, Yi Lushui, Pang Shuai, and the others opened their mouths and revealed sinister cold smiles. Their faces were filled with complacency. Kaboom! The dark golden arrow dragged a 10-mile-long crack in the void and hit Ji Tianqing. However, the dark gold arrow was blocked by the extremely thick multicolored shield. The five-colored shield was formed by the heaven and earth power within 1,000 miles. Its defense was extremely strong. Even so, the shield was still shattered by the dark gold arrow. It shattered into thousands of pieces and scattered in all directions. The power that could annihilate everything actually crushed the five-colored fragments that filled the sky into fine powder. Soon after, the dark golden arrow pierced the heaven barrier sword that was as black as ink, causing a loud explosion to ring out. A golden mushroom cloud suddenly bloomed and filled the entire array. The dark golden arrow exploded. The burial of heaven sword was also shaken by the explosion. It let out a crisp buzzing sound that lasted for a long time. The terrifying impact sent Ji Tianqing flying. He crashed into the five-colored shield with a bang. The five-colored light barrier formed by the combined efforts of the two martial saints also had a deep crater in it, and dense cracks appeared all around it. Puff! Ji Tianqing's face was pale. He spat out a mouthful of blood. He fell from the sky and knelt on one knee. He held the burial of heaven sword with both hands and stabbed it into the rocky ground. His long hair draped over his shoulders, covering his face. Everyone could only vaguely see drops of blood dripping from the corner of his mouth to the ground. They quickly stained the ground. Even with the protection of the heaven and earth avatar and the burial of heaven sword, he was still injured by the god-splitting bow. Especially his divine soul. It was severely injured on the spot. His consciousness was dizzy and blurry. Seeing him kneeling on the ground with disheveled hair, Divine Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the rest were worried and angry. But they also heaved a sigh of relief. After all, Ji Tianqing's body was intact. He was not killed by the god-splitting bow. This was already very fortunate. It was an incredible miracle. On the other side of the five-colored shield, Peng Shuai also fell to the ground with a pale face and dim eyes. After all, the god-splitting bow was a divine weapon. It was not his natal treasure. He had forcefully used the god-splitting bow and shot an arrow with all his strength. He had already used up 80% of his dermic powers and mental strength. Now, he was an arrow at the end of its flight. He was extremely weak. The dark golden god-splitting bow was as heavy as a mountain. It fell to the ground beside him. He did not even have the strength to pick up the god-splitting bow, let alone shoot a second arrow. Outside the formation, Yi Lushui was dumbfounded with shock. His body was stiff as if he had been petrified. His eyes were bloodshot as he stared at Ji Tianqing without blinking. No matter what, he could not believe this result. Peng Shuai had shot an arrow with all his strength, but he had not been able to kill Ji Tianqing. Could it be that the arrow was fake? Could it be that the god-splitting bow was a fake divine weapon? Could it be that the scene just now was an illusion? The incomparable shock left Yi Lushui dumbfounded, and his mind went blank. The god-splitting bow was his natal treasure, and he had refined it for hundreds of years. He was well aware of its power. In the past, he had used the god-splitting bow to kill a martial saint from another country with a single arrow. His name had spread throughout the Shenwu continent. How could the god-splitting bow, which could even kill a martial saint, fail to kill Ji Tianqing? After a long time, Yi Lushui regained his senses and gradually regained his senses. Unparalleled rage, shock, and disappointment caused his eyes to turn scarlet red like flames, and his body started to tremble. He could already see the result, and there was no suspense. At this moment, Ji Tianqing, who was within the array, had already launched a brazen counterattack. He slowly stood up and took a step forward. He stepped into the night sky and charged towards Peng Shuai. Godslayer spear. His tone was cold and murderous as he slowly raised his left palm. Endless golden flames spewed out from his palm and condensed into a 10-meter-long spear of golden flames. Whoosh! The Godslayer spear pierced through the night sky, carrying with it the power to destroy heaven and earth as it headed straight for Pang Shui. Pang Shui was shocked by the power of the spear, and his face turned pale. His eyes widened, revealing a look of despair. He wanted to dodge and teleport away. However, he was suppressed by an invisible divine power and could not move. His weak body made it difficult for him to move. The next moment, boom! There was a loud explosion that reverberated through the universe and spread for 300 miles. The endless golden divine flames exploded like a mushroom cloud and soared into the sky. The entire five-colored light barrier was filled to the brim. It shook violently and numerous cracks appeared on its surface. Under everyone's gaze, Pang Shui was hit by the Godslayer spear, and his body shattered into countless pieces before being burned to ashes by the golden divine flames. After 20 breaths, the loud explosion that reverberated in the night sky dissipated. The five-colored light barrier regained its clarity. Pang Shui had died on the spot and had been reduced to ashes. Ji Tianqing stood proudly in the night sky, his expression cold and indifferent. His body exuded an unparalleled, domineering aura. 8 consecutive victories. Chapter 1849. The life and death gamble had ended. The experts of the two divine kingdoms had completely different expressions. The atmosphere was completely different. On the Luoshui divine kingdom side, Su Chen and the generals were in high spirits. They raised their arms and cheered excitedly. Their faces were flushed with excitement. Their eyes were surging with deep reverence as they shouted, Ji Tianqing, white-clothed killing god, hero, and other names. Divine Emperor Chongyun also revealed a gratified smile. He was in high spirits as he stroked his beard and nodded repeatedly to express his praise. On the Heaven and Divine Kingdom side, Yi Liushui's face was as black as the bottom of a pot. His eyes were scarlet like blood and his entire body surged with blood-red flames of killing intent. Originally, there were 9 generals by his side, but now, there were only 2 left. One was the weakest and didn't go up. The other was the one who decisively admitted defeat and was heavily injured. Those 2 generals were the same as the 50 divine guards. They all had expressions of grief as if their parents had died. Their expressions were extremely dispirited. The 8 Tribulation Realm generals were all elite generals of the Heaven and Divine Kingdom. They were martial lords whose names shook the entire region. But in the end, they were all defeated by Ji Tianqing's sword. 7 of them were killed. Only one of them admitted defeat on the spot. Only then could they drag out an ignoble existence. From the beginning to the end of the life and death gamble, not more than 2 hours had passed. What a disgrace that was! Everyone was filled with shame and anger. They couldn't even raise their heads, nor did they have the face to look at the expressions of the Luoshui generals. After a moment, Ji Tianqing put away the burial of heaven. His sharp eyes searched the ground for the god-splitting bow. However, the god-splitting bow had already disappeared. He didn't even need to guess to know that the bow was most likely Yi Liushui's treasure. Yi Liushui must have taken back the bow in the chaos to avoid being exposed. Ji Tianqing originally planned to pursue this matter. Since the bow had already disappeared, he didn't want to waste his breath. After all, even if he brought it up, Yi Liushui would flatly deny it. He looked at Yi Liushui with an indifferent expression and said with a deep voice, Yi Liushui, the gamble is over. Accept your loss. Divine Emperor Chongyun also took a few steps forward. He looked at Yi Liushui with a sharp gaze and shouted, Yi Liushui, your heaven and divine kingdom lost. Now, it's time for you to fulfill your promise, return the 20 mining areas, and withdraw your army. For tonight's duel, we have already established a heaven and earth covenant. If you don't want to become the laughingstock of the entire continent, don't even think about denying it. Yi Lushui slowly raised his head and glared at Saint Emperor Chongyun with bloodshot eyes. He shouted in a hoarse voice, "Su Chongyun. Don't be complacent. This emperor did not lose to you, but lost to a peerless monster, Ji Tianqing. Don't worry, this emperor has always been a man of his word and will absolutely not go back on it. Within 3 days, this emperor will return those mines to you and withdraw from this place." After saying that, he looked at Ji Tianqing with a venomous gaze and said in a cold voice, "Ji Tianqing. You are good, very good. I will remember you. Don't worry, we'll meet again. Tonight's enmity, this emperor will definitely repay it tenfold." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand and turned around to step into the night sky. 2 generals and more than 50 immortal guards hurriedly followed him and returned to the Heaven Extinction Camp. Ji Tianqing looked at Yi Liushui's back and sneered. "At that time, I'm afraid you will be even more humiliated than tonight." A firm and confident voice floated in the night sky. Saint Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others all looked at Ji Tianqing in shock, admiring his confidence and courage. Yi Lushui and the others naturally heard this sentence. His body stiffened, but his footsteps only paused for a moment before he sped up and left. After Yi Lushui and the others left, Ji Tianqing turned around and walked out of the 5-colored light shield. Saint Emperor Chongyun hurriedly greeted him and asked about his injuries with concern. "Ji Tianqing, how are your injuries? Are they serious?" Ji Tianqing shook his head and said indifferently, "It's just a minor injury, nothing to worry about." Saint Emperor Chongyun was still worried and hurriedly released his divine sense to check his injuries. He said, "The golden bow that Pang Shui used is most likely Yi Liushui's soul-splitting bow. It's a saint-grade magic treasure. You were injured by the arrow intent and your divine soul is also injured. You must not be careless." After checking Ji Tianqing's injuries, he took out a crystal white jade bottle from his space ring and handed it to Ji Tianqing. "Ji Tianqing, here is a divine soul jade crystal pill. It's a saint-grade elixir given to this emperor by the divine master. It's specially used to nourish and heal the divine soul. This emperor has been keeping it and is reluctant to use it unless it's a critical moment. Quickly take this saint-grade elixir. Not only can it heal your divine soul, but it can also strengthen your divine soul." Ji Tianqing glanced at him and asked with a smile, "Such a precious saint-grade elixir given by the divine master must be a priceless treasure. Are you really going to give it to me?" Saint Emperor Chongyun hurriedly nodded and said sincerely, "You've helped this emperor a great deal. It's only right for this emperor to give you a saint-grade elixir. When we return to Sun City, this emperor will have to think about how to thank you." Since he said so, Ji Tianqing didn't stand on ceremony and took the jade bottle. "I'll take this divine soul jade crystal pill. If there's nothing else, I'll go back to Sun City to heal first." Saint Emperor Chongyun hurriedly nodded and said, "Okay, this emperor will send Su Chen and the 2 generals to escort you back. There are still some things here that this emperor needs to take care of." Ji Tianqing wanted to refuse. However, Su Chen and the 2 generals were very enthusiastic. They came over excitedly and bowed to him as if they were extremely honored. Ji Tianqing could only give up. He took Su Chen and the 2 generals away from the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain and returned to Sun City. After Ji Tianqing left, Saint Emperor Chongyun cast a spell and removed the defensive formation at the peak. The inside of the 5-colored light shield had turned into a deep pit filled with holes and ravines. After the formation was removed, the originally calm Drifting Cloud Mountain started shaking violently, making muffled rumbling sounds. In just a few breaths, a dozen wide cracks appeared on the ground, extending from the peak to the middle of the mountain. The entire Drifting Cloud Mountain was torn apart. It was on the verge of collapsing, and countless mud and boulders had collapsed. Seeing this, the generals were all shocked. They were even more in awe of Ji Tianqing. Everyone knew that Drifting Cloud Mountain had been protected by the formation before, so it looked fine. Now that the formation wasn't protecting it, the cracks inside the mountain were exposed. Fortunately, there was a saint-level formation supporting it. Otherwise, this 10,000-meter-tall mountain would have been destroyed in the battle and become a pile of ruins. Afterward, Saint Emperor Chongyun took a few generals and rushed to the mines deep underground. He gathered troops and horses to guard them. After setting up the defenses, Saint Emperor Chongyun returned to Sun City. Chapter 1850. After Ji Tianqing returned to Setting Sun City, he stayed in a secret room in Pine Courtyard. He consumed the Divine Soul Jade Crystal Pill and began to heal. As soon as the white pill entered his stomach, it immediately emitted a cool and refreshing aura that spread into his blood vessels and spread throughout his limbs and bones. Ji Tianqing's internal organs were injured, and he felt a burning pain. Under the comfort of the cold air, the piercing pain also quickly disappeared. Immediately after, the majestic and mighty medicinal power converged towards his sea of consciousness like a rolling river, and began to repair the damage to his soul. Ji Tianqing closed his eyes and circulated his energy, but a gratified smile appeared on his lips. Luo Shui really listened to my suggestion and improved the Divine Soul Jade Crystal Pill. Its effects are 3 times stronger, and its energy is even purer. The Divine Soul Jade Crystal Pill was a saint-level pill created by martial god Luo Shui. It specialized in healing and nourishing the soul. 1,000 years ago, martial god Luo Shui had often refined this saint-level pill to reward her subordinates. Once, Kenshin had accidentally seen her refine this pill. After observing it for a night, he had given her suggestions. At the time, martial god Luo Shui had not taken it to heart and had only thanked him. Kenshin had thought that martial god Luo Shui did not agree with his point of view. He had not expected that after 1,000 years, Ji Tianqing would consume a saint-level pill refined by martial god Luo Shui. Only now did he understand that martial god Luo Shui had listened to his suggestion and taken it to heart. 3 days had passed without him noticing. The people and army of Setting Sun City, as well as the surrounding mines, all knew of the white-robed god of slaughter's deeds. In the past 20 days, everyone had heard reports of victory from the front lines every day. The white-robed god of slaughter had killed many enemies and subdued several mines. In the hearts of the millions of martial artists, people, and miners, the white-robed god of slaughter was a great hero, a savior of the world. And in the past 3 days, a shocking piece of news had spread from Setting Sun City. The white-robed god of slaughter had appeared and revealed his true face. 3 nights ago, 2 martial saints had brought their generals to the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain to negotiate. The white-clothed killing god suddenly appeared and reached an agreement with the martial saint Yi Lushui. They made a bet in front of everyone. He wanted to challenge the 8 generals of the Heaven Extinction Divine Nation and hold a life and death gambling match at the peak of Drifting Cloud Mountain. If he lost, he would have to pay with his life. If he won, he would be able to take back the 20 mining areas and let the Tianju army retreat. The result was beyond everyone's expectations. The white-clothed killing god fought 8 battles in a row and actually did not suffer a single defeat. He killed 7 heaven-end grade generals and forced one of them to admit defeat and beg for mercy in front of everyone. Such a dazzling battle achievement was simply world-shaking, causing everyone to be shocked in their hearts and find it hard to believe. The most amazing and heaven-defying thing was that the white-clothed killing god was only at the first level of the crossing tribulation realm. Even so, he was still able to defeat 8 martial lords in a row. He could be said to be invincible under the martial saint realm. This news was incomparably explosive and shocking. Everyone who heard the news would be stunned for a long time before coming back to their senses. In addition, the true identity of the white-clothed god of slaughter was also revealed. He was the #1 god disciple of the Luoshui god nation, the #1 genius of the continent, Ji Tianqing. Although the cultivators and commoners of the Sunset City were still unfamiliar with this name, they did not idolize him. However, this didn't stop them from seeing him as their idol. They were filled with gratitude and fanaticism for him. In just 3 days, Ji Tianqing's heaven-defying battle achievements and legendary deeds had spread throughout the Sunset City. Everyone knew about it. Everyone's blood would boil when they talked about his deeds. They would be proud and excited to the extreme. After all, he had almost single-handedly slaughtered more than 600,000 heaven-end grade soldiers and saved the entire Sunset Divine Mine. Such a heaven-defying legend was hard to come by in 1,000 years. Moreover, Ji Tianqing's legendary deeds had spread like the wind to the various main cities at the border. It would not take long for the entire western border to know about this matter. He would soon become famous in the Luoshui god nation and become a great hero and a legendary genius known by the world. However, Ji Tianqing had been circulating his energy to heal his injuries in the pine tree courtyard and did not know about this. How the outside world spread his fame and how the people worshipped him seemed to have nothing to do with him. Early morning of the 4th day. The sun rose from the east and spread its warm sunlight over the entire Sunset City. Ji Tianqing finally ended his cultivation and walked out of the secret chamber. His injuries had long been healed, and after refining the Divine Soul Jade Crystal Pill, his Divine Soul power had greatly increased. Now, his Divine Soul power was comparable to an expert at the 7th level of the Tribulation stage. If he were to fight Peng Shuai again, his Divine Soul would not be injured again if he used all his strength to block the God-splitting bow. Ji Tianqing had just arrived at the living room when he saw a figure standing at the door. It was a handsome young man, Su Chen. At this moment, Su Chen was not wearing a golden robe and was actually bare-chested. He held a dark green thorn in his hands and stood motionless at the door. 2 maids stood in the courtyard, looking as if they wanted to say something but stopped. They seemed to want to persuade Su Chen, but due to Su Chen's prestige, they did not dare to approach and speak. Ji Tianqing glanced at Su Chen who was at the door. He sat at the table and picked up a cup of spirit tea to taste. After taking a sip of tea, he asked slowly, "Su Chen, what are you doing?" Su Chen strode into the living room and knelt in front of him. He said sincerely, "Young Master Ji, I was blind before and offended you. You are an honored guest of Sunset City, but you risked your life and single-handedly killed your way into the mine. You took action silently and recovered the lost mine. Compared to your efforts and noble sentiments, what I, Su Chen, do, and think is simply ungrateful, despicable, and shameless. Although you have never scolded me, I have been thinking about it for the past few days and still can't let it go. Today, Su Chen has come to apologize and ask for your forgiveness. Please punish me severely, young Master Ji. Only then can I be at ease." After Su Chen finished speaking in a serious tone, he held the thorn stick with both hands and handed it to Ji Tianqing. Ji Tianqing put down the teacup and reached out to take the thorn. He tapped his palm lightly and asked thoughtfully, "Ask for forgiveness? Did your father ask you to come?" In his mind, someone as young and impetuous as Su Chen, who also had a martial saint as a father, was definitely one of the most arrogant second generations of the Luoshui Divine Kingdom. For such a proud and arrogant person to put down his pride and ask for forgiveness, it was most likely Su Chongyun who forced him to do so. However, he did not expect Su Chen to shake his head and deny it without hesitation. He said solemnly, "Please understand, young Master Ji. I swear on my character that this matter has nothing to do with my father. You silently helped my father, sacrificed so much for the Sunset Divine Mine, and took such a big risk. When I found out that you were the white god of killing, I recalled my previous actions and thoughts and felt ashamed and unable to eat or sleep. Chapter 1851. Su Chen's attitude was sincere and didn't seem to be fake. Seeing this scene, Ji Tianqing nodded with satisfaction and said, You have such determination and courage. You didn't lose face for your father. You're worth teaching, your future is bright. Saying this, he waved the thorny vines and whipped Su Chen's back, neither too hard nor too light. Golden flames surged from his palm and burned the vines to ashes. All right, can you untie the knot in your heart now? Su Chen smiled excitedly and cupped his hands in greeting. Thank you, young Master Ji. Su Chen can't thank you enough. Ji Tianqing nodded and waved his hand. All right, you can leave now. Remember to put on your clothes. Don't let the servants see you and spread any rumors. Also, go tell your father that I plan to leave Sunset City tomorrow and return to Luotian Mountain. Su Chen was startled and asked anxiously, Young Master Ji, you've only stayed in Sunset City for a few days. My father hasn't formally entertained you yet. Now that you've saved the Sunset Divine Mine and made a great contribution, my father and the people of the city have to thank you properly. Why don't you stay for a few more days so that my father can? Ji Tianqing waved his hand. It's just an empty title. Don't worry about it. Go. Su Chen couldn't persuade him any further. He cupped his hands in greeting and left. After leaving Pine Courtyard, he put on his golden robe and jade crown and hurried to the conference hall to report to Holy Emperor Changyun. Inside the conference hall, Holy Emperor Changyun and the generals were discussing important military matters. Hearing Su Chen's report and knowing that Ji Tianqing was leaving, Holy Emperor Changyun and the generals were startled and anxious. They didn't expect Ji Tianqing to leave so soon. Holy Emperor Changyun hurriedly ended the meeting and led the generals out of the main hall, heading towards Pine Tree Courtyard. At the same time, news of Ji Tianqing's departure quickly spread through Changyun Palace and into Sunset City. Half an hour later, Ji Tianqing finished his preparations and got up to leave Pine Tree Courtyard. He had just walked to the gate of the courtyard when he saw that the bluestone road outside was packed with people. The leader was Holy Emperor Changyun. Behind him were Su Chen and more than 30 generals and commanders. Further back, it was filled with soldiers, captains, martial artists, and commoners. Moreover, there were many guards, maids, and soldiers gathering from all directions. Seeing that Ji Tianqing had come out, everyone bowed in unison and shouted in a sincere tone, We sincerely request young Master Ji to stay for a few more days. Ji Tianqing was also stunned for a moment. He didn't expect the crowd to make such a big fuss to keep him. He raised his hands, gesturing for everyone to rise. Everyone in the field quieted down and focused their gazes on him. He cupped his hands to the crowd and smiled, Thank you for your hospitality, but I still have important matters to attend to, so I can't stay. Everyone looked regretful and pitiful, but no one made a ruckus. Holy Emperor Changyun took 2 steps forward and arrived in front of Ji Tianqing. He said solemnly, Young Master Ji, it was all thanks to your help that we were able to resolve this crisis. Just yesterday, the 20 mines near Drifting Cloud Mountain were all returned. Heaven's and Divine Nation's army of 1,000,000 also retreated. Young Master Ji, you're a great hero of Sunset City for your contributions. The commoners, the 3 million miners, and the garrison will forever remember your kindness. Unfortunately, you have important matters to attend to and can't stay for a few more days. This emperor and the commoners would like to entertain you, but we won't have the chance. When he spoke up to hear, Saint Emperor Changyun withdrew a dark purple treasure box from his sleeve and passed it to Ji Tianqing. Young Master Ji, this is a gift that this emperor and the commoners of Sunset City have prepared for you. We thank you for your help. Please accept it. Otherwise, this emperor and the commoners won't be able to rest easy. Ji Tianqing could see that there was another world in the dark purple box. It contained all kinds of treasures and cultivation resources. He hesitated and thought to himself, even if Su Chongyun didn't give me this gift, my harvest from the Sunset Mine is already shocking enough. In the past 20 days, he had killed so many black spirit guards and collected more than 300 interspatial rings and more than 2,000 mines. The treasures and cultivation resources in those interspatial rings were worth at least 500 million spirit stones. As for the 2,000 mines, their value was inestimable. They could be exchanged for tens of billions of spirit stones. It was no exaggeration to say that even a martial saint like Holy Emperor Chongyun couldn't have so much wealth and resources. Ji Tianqing placed more than 2,000 mineral veins in the sword world. With the protection of the Earth Spirit race and the Xitigarbha divine armor, the mines would definitely grow stronger. From now on, he and the Earth Spirit race wouldn't have to worry about the mines. While Ji Yunshu was silent, Su Chen, the generals, and the soldiers all bowed in unison and shouted in unison, "Young Master Ji, please accept our sincerity." Since they were so sincere, Ji Tianqing couldn't refuse. He thanked them and accepted the box. He didn't open the box and put it in his interspatial ring. Instead, he cupped his hands and said, "I accept everyone's gift. I will take my leave now." Holy Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others didn't ask him to stay. They all cupped their hands and sent him off. Ji Tianqing and Holy Emperor Chongyun walked side by side. They walked out of the palace of Chongyun and headed to the city square. Along the way, countless cultivators and commoners gathered on both sides of the road to send him off. More than 100,000 commoners of Sunset City gathered in the city square. Everyone was shouting and bowing to express their gratitude. They watched him fly into the sky and quickly leave. A long time later, Ji Tianqing's figure disappeared over the horizon. Holy Emperor Chongyun, Su Chen, and the others turned and returned to the palace of Chongyun. However, the hundreds of thousands of soldiers and civilians were still standing where they were, discussing with reluctance. The name Ji Tianqing and the title White-Robed Killing God were engraved in the hearts of the people. They were engraved in the minds of the people of Sunset Divine Mine. After leaving Sunset City, Ji Tianqing summoned the Black Dragon. He rode the Black Dragon across the sky and rushed back to Luotian Mountain at lightning speed. On the way, when he passed by a few main cities at the border, he purposely observed the situation in them. The main cities were very peaceful. They weren't damaged or destroyed. There were only some small signs of fighting. Seeing this, Ji Tianqing was completely relieved. He could guess that the heaven-shattering alliance's elites who snuck into the main cities at the border to create chaos were mostly dealt with. The crisis at Sunset Divine Mine this time was a scheme of the Heaven and Divine Nation. Chapter 1852. 20 days later, Ji Tianqing returned to the Luotian Mountain. It had been more than 2 months since he left the Luotian Mountain and rushed to the Sunset Divine Mine to resolve the crisis. The news of him saving the Sunset Divine Mine and fighting Yi Lushui had already spread to the Luotian Mountain. However, he didn't contact Granny Long, and Granny Long didn't know when he would return. When he returned to the Luotian Mountain, he was rather low-key and calm, and the Luotian Mountain didn't welcome him. In a warm and elegant room in the Cloud Water Palace, Yunyao was sitting at the table, holding a book with both hands and reading the contents of the book with a gentle expression. Although this wasn't a martial arts secret manual, it was just an ordinary book about local customs and practices. She read it very carefully and read it very clearly. Black Eagle stood quietly at the door not far away. He looked at Yunyao's serious and attentive appearance, and a smile appeared in his eyes. At this moment, Ji Tianqing appeared at the door, looking travel-worn. Black Eagle was pleasantly surprised when he saw him appear, and he hurriedly bowed respectfully. "Welcome back, young master." Yunyao, who was focused on reading, was awakened by Black Eagle's voice. She hurriedly put down the book and turned to look at the door. Seeing Ji Tianqing return, she was overjoyed and hurriedly stood up to welcome him. Tianqing, you're finally back. Ji Tianqing hurriedly entered the room and reached out to help her sit down carefully. Yao Yao, I'm back. Don't be too excited, be careful of our children. Yunyao sat down at the table with him and stroked her lower abdomen with a smile. Tianqing, don't worry, the little ones aren't that delicate, they won't affect them. Them? Ji Tianqing was stunned, and his expression was filled with disbelief. He also became more and more excited. Yao Yao, you mean, our children, our twins? Yunyao nodded and revealed a gentle smile. She said in a gratified tone, yes. During the 2 months you were gone, I had been in seclusion and cultivating with Lu Li. When I came out of seclusion half a month ago, I realized that our child was a little special. Not only can I sense their life auras, but I can also distinguish between 2 auras. Even before the 2 little fellows were fully grown, they could already sense each other's souls. Although they can't speak or use soul transmissions, they can actually transmit their thoughts to me. Don't you think it's amazing? Ji Tianqing became more and more shocked and excited. He said with surprise, I really didn't expect that our child can communicate with you after only half a year of gestation. It was too unbelievable. This was just like something out of a legend. Yao Yao, when our child is born in the future, he will definitely be an unparalleled genius. Yunyao exuded a warm motherly aura, and an expectant smile appeared on her beautiful face. Yes. I really hope these 2 little guys can be born soon. Ji Tianqing thought of the scene just now. He glanced at the book on the table and asked, Yao Yao, how do you have time to read this kind of book? You even have to read it word by word? Yunyao revealed a playful smile. She pointed to her flat belly and explained, of course it's to teach our child. These 2 little fellows are too intelligent. They like to listen to me tell them stories and read the words in the book. They are very curious about this world. Every day, they have to listen to me tell stories and read books. Otherwise, they will remind me. Moreover, I can clearly sense the changes in their emotions. Ji Tianqing was even more shocked. He said in disbelief, our child is so special. They have emotions before they are fully grown. They can even take the initiative to understand this world. Yunyao smiled and nodded. She said in a gratified tone, other people's children have to learn to speak and walk after they are born. Only then can they speak, recognize words, and practice martial arts. Before our children are even born, I'm afraid they'll already be extremely knowledgeable and talented. In the future, I will focus on teaching them. Not only will I teach them about this world, but I will also teach them martial arts, alchemy, formations, and so on. When they are born in the future, they will know astronomy and geography, and be proficient in all kinds of martial arts-related knowledge. As she spoke, Yunyao's eyes were particularly bright, revealing a look of strong anticipation. Ji Tianqing also nodded in agreement and said, yes, this is a very good idea. Our child is born extraordinary, but he also needs to be taught patiently in order to grow faster. Yao Yao, I'll have to trouble you to teach the child in the future. After that, he stretched out his arms affectionately and held Yunyao in his arms. The 2 of them snuggled intimately, and the atmosphere was very warm and loving. When love reached the extreme, it would sublimate and become a family relationship where blood was thicker than water. The 2 children in Yunyao's womb also seemed to feel Ji Tianqing's aura. They were a little unfamiliar with him, but they were also a little curious. At the same time, they had a natural sense of closeness to Ji Tianqing, so they quietly released their divine soul aura to touch him. Ji Tianqing's heart suddenly trembled, and a strong sense of fatherly love welled up in his heart. He carefully responded to them with his divine sense. Warm time always passed very quickly. By the time Ji Tianqing and Yunyao finished discussing family matters, 4 hours had already passed. He let Yunyao continue to study for the children, then got up and left the Cloud Water Palace to report the situation to Granny Long. Under the guidance of the guard, Ji Tianqing walked into Granny Long's study. Granny Long was sitting at the table, looking at a pile of memorials in front of her in a daze. She looked worried and deep in thought. On the wide white jade table, there were several stacks of memorials and documents, all of which were related to the God Nation's affairs. When Ji Tianqing saw Granny Long's worried face, he guessed that the God Nation situation was not good. Something must have happened. "Greetings, Granny Long." He walked to the middle of the study and stood still, cupping his hands with a calm face. Granny Long was startled awake. She quickly turned her head to look at him, revealing a gratified smile. "Tianqing, you're finally back. What you did in the Sunset Divine Mine, the miracle you created, this old woman has already heard about it. It's really incredible. You really didn't disappoint this old woman and the God Master. You resolved the danger of the Divine Mine so easily and became a great hero known by the whole nation. This old woman has already reported to the God Master and asked him to reward you heavily." Granny Long was a little emotional. Her old face was filled with gratification and pride. When Ji Tianqing had volunteered to go to the Sunset Divine Mine to help, she had been very worried, afraid that something would happen to Ji Tianqing. However, she never thought that Ji Tianqing would be so heaven-defying and give the world such a huge surprise. Ji Tianqing revealed a faint smile and said calmly, "Holy Emperor Chongyun has already given me a gift of thanks, so there's no need for the God Master to reward me. I came to find you not only to report the matter of the Sunset Divine Mine, but also to ask about the northern border. Just now, I saw that you had a worried look on your face, as if you were deeply worried." Chapter 1853. At the mention of Dark North Mountain, the smile on Granny Long's face gradually disappeared. She slowly frowned, her face became gloomy, and she sighed with a heavy heart. "That's right, the situation at the northern border is getting more and more dangerous. Dark North Mountain has become the biggest disaster for God Nation. Now, the flames of war at the border have spread to God Nation." Sigh. Ji Tianqing had already expected this result, so he wasn't surprised. Demons have always been like this. Once they make a decision, they won't change it easily. Especially when it comes to invading and killing, they are even more fanatical and won't regret it until they die. "Granny Long, tell me about the situation at the northern border." As he spoke, he sat down at the table and looked at Granny Long calmly. His attitude was very clear. Granny Long wanted to hide it from him, but she couldn't refuse. After a moment of silence, Granny Long said in a low voice, "Dark North Mountain has already done their best to break through the northern border and kill their way into God Nation. They have bared their fangs and want to take our Luoshui God Nation as an example. Although I and the God Lord are trying to resist, we have mobilized millions of troops from all the empires to fight at the northern border. But Dark North Mountain's attack is too fierce, and the border is too long, so our defense is weak. In the past 2 months, hundreds of main cities have fallen, and hundreds of millions of people have been slaughtered. A large number of demon troops and powerhouses have already broken through the border defense and killed their way into Qingmian and Changlong empires. They are wantonly killing and looting." After a pause, she continued, "Dark North Mountain's demons have invaded, and most of God Nation's troops and powerhouses are pinned down at the northern border. Because of this, when you were fighting against Yi Lushui at the Sunset Mine, I couldn't send people to help. Fortunately, you resolved the crisis at the Sunset Mine in the shortest time possible. If Yi Lushui and Su Chongyun were in a deadlock, the crisis at the Sunset Mine could not be resolved, and God Nation's situation would be even worse." Ji Tianqing frowned and asked, "Before I left, didn't I give you a demon-resisting note? Didn't you distribute it to the entire army? Why is the situation getting more and more dangerous? Did the Imperial Demon notes not work?" Granny Long was startled for a moment, then explained with a bitter smile, "The Imperial Demon Handbook you wrote is naturally useful, and the introduction is very detailed and comprehensive." This old woman did indeed distribute the Imperial Demon Notes, and let the generals make countless copies and distribute them to the army. However, the various methods recorded in the Imperial Demon Handbook were not suitable for large-scale battles. Only small-scale battles and experts above the primordial soul realm could use such methods to deal with the fiends. What's more, the demon race was crafty, sinister, and ruthless. They would constantly use all kinds of schemes and tricks, making it impossible to guard against. Of course, the most important problem is that the demons took the initiative to attack, while we were passively defending. No matter how strong the defense is, no matter how tight the defense is, there will always be loopholes and flaws. Sigh. After hearing Granny Long's words, Ji Tianqing understood her feelings and frowned. Of course, he knew how difficult it was to deal with the demons. Even if he wrote a demon warding manual and distributed it to the army, the effect would be minimal. It would be impossible to change the fundamental problem. After a moment of silence, he looked up at Granny Long and said with a firm gaze, "Granny Long, I understand the demon race the most, and they are their greatest nemesis. Please let me go to the northern border and assist the army to eliminate the demon race, and resolve the crisis at the border." Granny Long had already expected him to say this, so she shook her head and refused without hesitation. "Tianqing, you have brought this up more than once, but this old woman has to tell you clearly that it is impossible. Previously, when you wanted to go to the setting sun divine mine, this old woman had already hesitated for a long time before agreeing. After that, this old woman was worried for more than a month, afraid that something would happen to you, and I would not be able to explain it to the Divine Master. This time, this old woman will not let you go to the northern border and face the demon race head-on. The demon race is not the people of heaven and divine nation, they are cruel, bloodthirsty, and inhumane." Ji Tianqing frowned and said with a firm tone, "It is because the demon race is rampant, wantonly slaughtering the people of divine nation, that I have to deal with them. Now that divine nation is in danger, there are a large number of people and soldiers dying every day, how can I just sit and watch?" Granny Long argued with reason, no matter how dangerous the divine nation is, there are millions of soldiers and generals to deal with it, and the 7 empires to fight together. Even if they die on the battlefield, it is their duty and mission to sacrifice themselves for the divine nation. And you are a god's disciple of Luotian Mountain, your duty is to stay in Luotian Mountain, cultivate and improve your strength. Seeing that Ji Tianqing was not convinced, he still wanted to refute. Granny Long said earnestly, "Even if you don't listen to this old woman's advice, you still have to think about Yun Yao and your children, right?" This sentence hit Ji Tianqing's soft spot, and he immediately fell silent. After a while, he said, "If Yun Yao knows that I am going to the border to fight against the demon race, she will definitely support my decision." Granny Long was completely helpless, she pretended to be dignified and shouted angrily, "No matter what you say, this old woman will not agree. The Luo River Kingdom has thousands of years of history, how can it be destroyed by North Underworld Mountain so quickly? No matter how dangerous the divine nation is, it is not to the point where you need to go to the battlefield." Ji Tianqing suddenly thought of an idea, he asked, "Granny Long, you just said that as a god's disciple, my duty is to cultivate and improve my strength. Then I will go back to cultivate in seclusion now, and when I successfully pass the second heavenly tribulation, you will agree to let me go to the northern border, what do you think?" "The second heavenly tribulation?" Granny Long was stunned, she said with a strange expression, "Didn't you just pass the first heavenly tribulation a few months ago?" Ji Tianqing quickly nodded and said, "Yes. But I believe that as long as I cultivate in seclusion, I will attract the second heavenly tribulation soon." Granny Long looked at him with a strange expression and thought to herself, what's wrong with Tianqing? Is he not in a hurry to go to the northern border after listening to my advice? That's great, I don't have to worry about him all the time. He has just passed the first heavenly tribulation, and according to the convention of the continent, it will take at least 100 years for him to pass the second heavenly tribulation. Even if he is the number one genius of the continent, it will take him more than 10 years to trigger the second heavenly tribulation. It will take him at least 10 years to reach the second stage of the tribulation stage. By then, the crisis at the northern border will be over. Thinking of this, Granny Long could not help but feel relieved. She nodded with a smile and said, "Okay, Tianqing, it's good that you think so. I promise you, when you reach the second stage of the tribulation stage, I will allow you to go to the northern border to fight against the demon race in North Underworld Mountain." Chapter 1854. A quarter of an hour later, Ji Tianqing returned to the Cloud-Water Palace. Seeing him come back, Yunyao pulled him to sit down and asked him what he talked about with Granny Long. Ji Tianqing gave her a concise explanation. When Yunyao heard that he was going to the northern border to deal with the demon army, she also showed a worried look. After learning about his agreement with Granny Long, Yunyao frowned in confusion. "Tianqing, I understand how you feel. You are worried that the Dark North Mountain will rise quickly under the leadership of the ancestor demon god. Therefore, you want to go to the northern border to deal with the demon army and resolve the crisis of the Luoshui divine nation. Because you and I both know that the demon race will only develop and grow crazily in battles and battles. But why did you agree with Granny Long that you will only go to the northern border when you reach the second stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm? You know, even if I am worried about your safety, I will still support you in this matter." Yunyao looked at Ji Tianqing in confusion, obviously not understanding his intention. Ji Tianqing smiled and explained patiently, Yao, Granny Long won't let me go no matter what. I can only say this to make her feel at ease." Yunyao thought for a moment and gradually understood what he meant. She asked tentatively, "Ordinary Tribulation Transcendence realm powerhouses have to cultivate for at least 100 years to trigger the next heavenly tribulation. Even if you are the number one genius of the continent, Granny Long guessed that you will need at least 10 years to reach the second stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm. But by that time, the matter at the northern border will be over." Ji Tianqing nodded and said, "That's right. That's why Granny Long agreed to my condition." Yunyao smiled and said in a playful tone, "So Granny Long was deceived by you because you can reach the second stage of the Tribulation Transcendence realm in less than 10 years. "Of course," Ji Tianqing said in a complicated tone, "if I really have to wait 10 years, the Qingmian and Changlong empires would have already fallen." Yunyao nodded solemnly in agreement and asked, "How long will it take for you to reach the second stage of the crossing tribulation stage?" Ji Tianqing looked at her with a smile. "Take a guess." Yunyao thought for a moment and murmured, "You're not an ordinary genius, and you're also Kenshin's reincarnation. I estimate that you'll have at most 2 years. Ordinary experts would need more than 100 years to pass the second tribulation. If you can do it within 2 years, that would definitely shock the entire Shenwu continent, and it would be called the first miracle in history. At that time, your name will definitely spread to every corner of the continent." Ji Tianqing smiled and shook his head. His tone was calm and indifferent as he said, 2 years is too long. 3 months is enough." "What?" Yunyao's expression changed immediately. Her clear eyes widened, and she was so shocked that she was almost petrified. Ji Tianqing stretched out his hand and cupped her beautiful face. He smiled and said, "That's why you have to help me keep this a secret. On the day of my tribulation, you have to give Granny Long a surprise." Yunyao gradually regained her senses and looked at him with bright eyes. She transmitted her voice to him, "If that's really the case, then it won't be a surprise, but a shock. In the tens of thousands of years of history, there has never been such a miracle. You've undergone 2 tribulations in just 1 year. Not to mention the millions of warriors who would be shocked to death, even the 3 war gods would be scared to death by you. Tianqing, how did you do it? This doesn't conform to the heavenly Tao. Ji Tianqing looked out the window at the sky and said calmly, the martial path naturally conforms to the heavenly Tao, but that's not necessarily the case for the divine Tao. Perhaps I've broken through the heavenly Tao's shackles and am no longer restricted by it. This. Yunyao was completely speechless. She didn't know how to describe and evaluate it. After a long time, her emotions calmed down. She looked at Ji Tianqing with shining eyes and said seriously, Tianqing, maybe you're no longer a human, but a god. Ji Tianqing nodded slightly. He held her hands and said, aren't you the same? Ever since my memories were awakened, I knew that you and I don't belong to this world. One day, we will leave this tiny cage and enter a more vast world. Yunyao was silent and didn't say anything. She just nodded with a firm look. Afterward, Ji Tianqing asked about the glazed fire dragon situation. Yunyao told him everything. The glazed fire dragon had been in secluded cultivation for the past 2 months. It had a lot of cultivation resources and top-notch healing pills, so its injuries had long been healed and it had returned to its peak. What it was most concerned about now was the problem of its bloodline imbalance. Cultivating on Luotian Mountain, the divine power of heaven and earth was of the water attribute, which could suppress its fire attribute bloodline. But no one could teach it, and it didn't know how to strengthen the other 2 bloodlines. Therefore, after Ji Tianqing thought for a moment, he said to Yunyao, I have a way to solve this problem. Wait for me for a moment. After that, he entered the sword world and entered the heavenly book pavilion with ease. Relying on his vague memories, he searched for a quarter of an hour in the heavenly book pavilion, and found an ancient black secret book. The black ancient book, as thick as a brick, had been covered in dust for at least 1,000 years. There was a hazy dragon-shaped pattern engraved on the cover, and 4 ancient golden seal characters were written. The scripture of the heavenly dragon. Holding this precious and ancient secret book in his hand, Ji Tianqing's eyes showed a strong look of reminiscence. For experts outside the dragon clan, this ancient book is like waste paper and is useless. But for the divine dragon clan, this is the supreme divine Tao Codex. I don't know if those old dragons in the dragon realm still remember the agreement from back then. Sigh. After a light sigh, he casually flipped open the scripture of the heavenly dragon, stopped at page 80, and began to read carefully. From page 88 to page 100, he memorized the contents of the entire 12 pages without missing a word. Then, he left the sword world and returned to his room. Seeing him appear, Yunyao quickly asked, Tianqing, have you found a solution? I've found it. Ji Tianqing nodded, took out a jade slip, and used his divine sense to enter the jade slip. Originally, he had entered all 12 pages of text into the jade slip. But after thinking for a moment, he erased the contents of the 12th page. Yao Yao, give this jade slip to Azure, let it cultivate in peace in the secret room, and properly comprehend the cultivation method in the jade slip. In the next 10 years, if it can thoroughly comprehend this cultivation method and successfully cultivate it, it can awaken the second main bloodline. Yunyao reached out to take the jade slip, and asked with interest, you seem to have erased a part of the contents just now, was it the core of the cultivation method? That's not it. Ji Tianqing did not hide it from her, and explained, but that is an essential and crucial point, as long as I don't reveal it, Azure can't completely succeed. The reason why I left it behind is for your own good, lest it becomes disloyal and harm you. You're tuning into the Xiaofan's Wuxia Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.